Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Tuesday, October 9th. We're now in the middle of fall, though tomorrow's going to feel like summer, I'm told.
Nice.
So,
Bonus.
right. The leaves are starting to turn. It's a very pretty time of year in these parts of New England. So first, a couple of announcements. This board has entered into a little wager with the supervisor of the town of Oyster Bay, New York, on the outcome of the Yankees Red Sox series. What's interesting is that's my family lives in the town of Oyster Bay currently, or a lot of my family, so it was interesting being approached by them. So what we have on the line is if the Red Sox wins, we get oysters, and then if the Yankees win, we send clam chowder down to Long Island.
Well, based on the performance last night, I would say we're in good shape.
Yeah, so we can know whether we're going to be feasting in oysters or them feasting in clam chowder. Well, we could know about the oysters tonight, but the clam chowder would take another day. So, on a more serious note, I'd like to announce publicly a vote that this board took in executive session. This board voted to sign a lease which would allow the building of the proposed new main home for the BEEP program at 127 Harvard Street. And we're eternally grateful to the donor. It's financially a very favorable lease to us. There were some, I will say, this wasn't as easy a decision as it could have been, because there were some provisions in the lease that really gave us a lot of pause. But I think a majority of the board weighed the risks versus the benefits and came to the conclusion that it was worth taking some of the risks presented by some of the lease provisions to the town. So I'd like to ask Vicki Milstein, who's the principal for early childhood education, if she'd like to say a few words.
First, I would very much like to thank this board for approving this final hurdle that we had to get over. And I know how you anguished and thought through the process, but it is a wonderful feeling to know that in about 18 months from construction start, BEEP will finally have a home to call its own. We will have a place to welcome families with children with needs, as well as families who are recently moved to Brookline and families who've been here for a very long time. We have a program that represents the rich diversity of the town, and we are delighted that you chose to support this process moving forward. We're very excited and hope to welcome you into this new home and show you just how lovely it is. I do want to also thank all of the people on the town boards who worked hard to help this move along. And I'm especially grateful to the school committee that didn't give up hope ever, and to the donor who has maintained a commitment to Brookline early education for more than 15 years. Finally, to the community of parents and children that we represent, on behalf of them, let me thank you. It is a wonderful, wonderful gift to be able to have a place to call our own.
Okay, so I guess we're starting on a high note.
Could you elaborate on some of the risks that you referred to briefly, of course, and again, what is the town getting into? I mean, I don't doubt this is I don't oppose deep and all that, believe me, but again, if there is some controversy.
Right, just very briefly, the town commits to maintaining the BEEP program at certain levels, and it takes away some of the flexibility the school committee might have otherwise. But the penalty is that we couldn't be able to use the building. So, the cost savings every year are substantial. So, it was a cost benefit.
And we're happy with the program the way it is. It's not as if we want to change.
Right, there's no intent to change the program.
It's the building itself, and also, second quick question.
What?
I think, do they have all the building permits, variants?
Yes,
and I
yes,
think
yes.
the original plan
Yep.
would require that.
Yep,
They've got it.
they've got it, yep. The lease was the last hurdle. Okay, thank you. Okay, any public comment? Anyone? I see none?
I just wanted to quickly
Yeah, I'm
announce
sorry.
that the Registry of Deeds is going to be back in Brookline doing an open house in about 2 weeks, Thursday, the 25th. This is something that the registrar has done before in Brookline. I think they do it twice a year, once in the fall and once in the spring. So a great opportunity to have questions about your property tax record and mortgage discharge and other things answered. Again, Thursday, the 25th at 10 a.m. here in Town Hall.
Boring stuff, but essential.
Yeah, very important, but things that we should think about every day, but many of us don't.
Any other announcements?
I have two. Corey Hill Day will be Sunday, October 14th from 2 to 4 p.m. Meet your neighbors, plant bulbs to bloom in the spring, sign up for the Corey Hill Park cleanup team. It's kid-friendly activities and play on the renovated playground with local music. Light snacks and beverages. Ooh, free snacks. Contact nicole.mccleland@gmail.com for more information. And then I have an exciting meeting coming up. The Kent Street Senior Affordable Housing Committee is having a community meeting to inform people of where we are to date and to answer any questions. That will be held on Monday, October 29th at 7 p.m. in this room.
Okay. Any other announcements? Yeah.
As part of the community outreach of the Baldwin Building Committee, we are having a meeting, an open meeting of the committee on Thursday at 7:30 in the morning. And we will have on the 17th a community-wide meeting where people can come and express their views, concerns, and opinions regarding the project. And we'll have subsequent meetings, community meetings that will enable people to express their concerns and views to the building committee at later dates. So.
Okay. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of stuff going on. Okay, getting into our agenda.
Public comment?
Yeah.
Public comment?
Anyone wish public comment? Okay.
Oh, I should make one announcement, which is
Okay.
that the Brookline High School Expansion Advisory Committee met for the first time this fall at the end of September, and we're very pleased about the work that's going on. The architects are continuing to develop the finer details with the staff. The MBTA, knock on some wood, seems to be going very, very well, and very pleased with the progress of the project. So we hope to be done by the fall of 2021, but there are some contingencies to stretch it out a little bit to the spring of 2022.
Have we had any surprises yet, or things?
No, not really. There's always pressures on contingencies and things of that nature, but not really, no.
Okay. Ms. Frawley?
Yes, good evening. a shred of summer, but only a minute. Regina Frawley from Precinct 16. The Town Meeting Members Association had reserved the room up here on the 24th to have our own discussion about Hancock Village. Since it appears Hancock Village articles are not going forward right now,
Right.
the room is going to be available for the mandatory training, if you like, which would be much more comfortable and audible here than it will be at the Putterham, and better parking and more opportunity. So I hope you'll take advantage of it. Thank you. If he hasn't already canceled, Arthur Conquest will be canceling it.
Okay. Can you let town council know? And yes, Hancock Village is being, nothing's happening with that.
Not being moved.
It won't be moved, so there's no reason to have any discussions. Okay, let's dive into our agenda. We have minutes for the 27th of September. I have a minor.
I have a couple of corrections too.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please say aye. Selectperson Franco?
Aye.
Selectperson Heller?
Aye.
Selectperson Green?
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay. We have a couple of temporary wine and malt beverage. Oh, no, we have the question of approving draft corporate average fuel economy standards letter to the EPA.
Correct. So the Climate Action Committee met at the very end of September, and everyone was very pleased that the Select Board adopted our Climate Action Plan, and we're moving on to some other issues. This was an issue that was taken, led by David Lescoyer and Nathan Spritz, who are in the audience. The EPA has proposed to, in essence, downgrade the fuel economy standards that had been set during the Obama administration. It's very distressing. California has led the way, but these particular provisions mean that it'll be much harder to convince auto manufacturers to continue on the path of electric vehicles and hybrids, and it'll also make it difficult for us to reach our goals. We've gotten word, I think it was last week in the newspapers, that scientists now say that climate change is accelerating much more quickly than they thought. And so it's all the more urgent that we actually do this. And I'm wondering if either David or Nathan want to step up to the plate here. I know how hard they worked on this, and I kept saying to them, make it short, make it short, make it short. And they did the very best they could.
So I will make it very short. Thank you for inviting us up, Select Person Heller. I think that Select Person Heller just did a great job in summarizing what the effect of the new CAFE standards would be. But I'd just like to add one thing of particular local interest. Every time an automobile burns more petroleum, it not only releases more carbon dioxide into the air, but it releases more pollutants. And in particular, Brookline I believe, has an interest in protecting the health of our children and protecting the health of our adults. And the fewer pollutants that are emitted from the tailpipe of a car, the healthier our community will be. The healthier our community will be, we'll meet our obligations to them, our obligations to protect our citizens and our residents. And the other thing that we can do here is we can meet our obligations under the Paris Agreement, which town meeting voted to join as a non-state participant about a year ago, and I believe that we are in the process of actually completing that process right now. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
David Lescuyer, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 11. The only thing that I'll add to what Nathan did, Nathan took the initiative. He did really the homework. I just helped him with a little bit of writing and editing to tie it into our issues in Brookline. This is after the adoption of our climate action plan, the first action that the select board is taking in reference to the climate action plan that you adopted in September. Thank you very much.
So at our meeting, as I said, both David and Nathan were present, and we forwarded this letter on to you for your consideration. There are a couple of more issues that are coming down the pike. One is that the EPA is also going to issue regulations which would in effect increase the amount of methane that is released into the atmosphere, which is, as you know, is one, I'm sure you've heard us talk about how bad that is, and also the burning of fossil fuels by factories. So this administration is determined to go backwards. I think we need to be forward-looking and go forward. And I hope that you will agree with the intent of this and support this letter.
Yeah, I support the letter. I have just a couple of, I'll call them non-substantive edits, keeping in mind that this is going to a federal agency in Washington who probably the people reading it may not have heard of Brookline. So it
How
starts.
shocking.
I'm writing on behalf of the Town of Brookline Select Board. My suggestion would be to then say Brookline is the largest town in Massachusetts with about 59,000 residents. There's a sentence that came off the town website about the authority of the Select Board, but I don't think the people in Washington are interested. But it does say the Select Board is submitting these comments as the town's chief executive body, having the authority to represent town and regional and metropolitan affairs. I think that's good. And then the board is writing, because there's before it says I am writing, then it says we are writing. So just changing the tense, the person. So
I don't have any problem with those.
right. Yes, select person.
I support this also, and I don't suggest any changes, but I am sort of surprised that what's missing in here is, that the board is concerned, and maybe we should change it. The board is concerned with the fact that these changes in the emission standards are going to increase pollution. I mean, that's the concrete way in which people really would understand this. I mean, we see pictures of Indian cities, see pictures of Chinese cities where the pollution you can cut with a knife. That is our reality. That is our future. And I would have put in the select board's concern with the increase in pollution and the effect that has on the health of our citizens.
I think that's a perfectly good addition. I would not necessarily change. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. I just make that a 9th point.
Okay.
It's already 2 pages. It's already a page and a half. So now it'll be a page and 2/3. It doesn't make that much difference, and I think it is a very valid point.
Okay, so any other discussion? So I will move that we authorize the chair to sign the letter as amended.
Why don't I work with Bernard Green,
Take
and
my,
I'll take your,
yeah,
and
okay.
we'll put it together and give it to Kate.
Okay. So all those in favor of the motion to authorize the chair to sign the letter, please say aye. Select Person Franco?
Aye.
Select Person Heller?
Aye.
Select Person Green?
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. So we do have some temporary licenses, so let's go through them. I will move that we grant temporary wine and malt beverage license to Coolidge Corner School for a fall coming to be held on Saturday, October 13th. Okay. From 7:30 to 10 at 345 Harvard Street. I'll also move that we grant 3 temporary all kinds alcoholic beverage sales, non-sales license to Lars Anderson Auto Museum at 15 Newton Street as follows. For a wedding reception to be held on Saturday, October 13th from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. For an annual club dinner to be held on Friday, October 26th from 5:30 to 11. For a wedding reception to be held on Saturday, October 27th from 4:30 to 11. I'll also move that we grant a temporary wine and malt beverage sales license to Boston University for a banquet reception to be held on Wednesday, October 24th from 4 to 7:30 p.m. at 43 Horse Street. I'll also move that we grant an all kinds alcoholic beverage sales license to Pine Manor College for a wedding to be held on Saturday, November 10th from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. at 400 Heath Street. And finally, I'll move that we grant 2 temporary wine and malt beverage sales licenses to Pine Manor College at 400 Heath Street for a corporate dinner event to be held on Thursday, November 15th from 6 to 9, and for a birthday party to be held on Sunday, November 18th from 6 to 11. All those in favor of all those temporary wine and malt beverage, and they're okay?
They're okay. The police department has reviewed the paperwork and sees no reason to deny any of these applications.
Okay. So all those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And as I was reading the temporary licenses, I neglected, it reminded me of an event that we should talk about, which is the official grand opening and ribbon cutting at the Coolidge Corner School.
Oh, yes.
And
Saturday.
this Saturday at 9:30 is the festivities.
In the morning.
In the morning, 9:30 in the morning, followed by tours, and then there's a festival
All
after
coming.
the fall coming that we just granted a temporary beverage license.
There'll be beverages, great.
No, I don't think this is for that. It's a different time.
This is for the evening,
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
right? So it won't be for the
I'll be there all day.
ribbon
I'll be
cutting.
there all day.
So that's whenever there's a new. It's not that often we have a new school, so this is a big deal. So hopefully, lots of people can join the festivities.
Yeah, with any luck, we'll be doing this a couple of more times over the next few years. So.
Right.
Become old hat.
Right. I remember. I guess I'm dating myself. When the new Lincoln School had a similar event in
20 years ago.
24 years ago, and it was a very exciting day for that neighborhood, and really brought the neighborhood together, and really was an agent of change in that neighborhood. It was kind of an anchor that. So anyway, hopefully everyone will join us there. Moving on to our calendar. So we have a recreation department. What do we want to do? Okay, so we'll hold it. So we have Elaine Ober. Come on up. And you're applying to be on the Commission on Disabilities.
For reappointment.
Reappointment. Okay. So you're re-upping.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's a wonderful commission.
So tell us about your experience and what you hope to be doing and
I would say that my experience on the commission has been overwhelmingly positive in all ways. This is a group of really dedicated, smart people who know a lot about accessibility and disability, and treat each and everything that comes before us, whether it's an ADA evaluation of a particular town department or a variance request from some, builder-architect combination, with courtesy and deep consideration. And I also think with a good pragmatic bent, because there are a lot of old buildings in Brookline, and you can do what you can do, and there are always going to be things with them that you maybe can't do. So I think that it's a very rational commission. It's been a real honor to help write the mission statement and develop long-term goals, and that's why I want to be reappointed, so that I can work towards seeing those goals come to fruition, particularly just making sure that venues in town are more accessible, and that boards, commissions, and all other spheres of public life here have better representation by people with disabilities.
Okay. Questions?
I'll just compliment Elaine for her hard work on the commission.
Thank you.
Been involved in a number of really important efforts. Article 12, I think it was about a year and a half ago at town meeting, established a bylaw within the town's bylaws empowering the Commission for the Disabled to take certain actions, and sort of clarified its role within town government. Elaine has also helped with a recent effort, a collaboration with the police department around 911 and clarifying how we get disabled individuals information into the 911 system, so when they pick up the phone and call, there's some awareness of who's calling and what some of their struggles may be, and the most effective way to communicate with them should they need to be evacuated or some communication is necessary. So I guess my question for you, Elaine, is what projects are you looking forward to on the commission? What do you think you hope to do over the next 3 years should you be reappointed?
I would very much like to continue working on that 911 emergency process, because quite honestly, I had no idea that existed, and I have a lot of friends with disabilities all across the country, and it kind of spurred me to ask them, hey, does your town or city have something like this? So I definitely want to continue working on that. And I'm also very interested in, as we move towards finalizing renovations for the high school and the ultimate building of another school, should that ever happen, to make sure that accessibility, that the Commission on Disability is part of the process from the very beginning, because the way you get into trouble with accessibility and disability accommodations is by not thinking of it at the beginning. It has to be an integral part of the whole process. And I'd like to help Brookline as a town move towards a place where that just happens as a matter of course. And it takes a lot of training and a lot of working with forms and systems and people, and that's really very important to me and something I'd like to work on.
So, piggybacking on Select Person's Franco's question, like specifically, what do you see as needs in the next few years regarding making town government, like town meeting, advisory committee, et cetera, accessible and inclusive for people with disabilities?
I think that town meeting actually is pretty accessible. It's more a question of...
Well, I'm thinking, in terms of everyone being able to hear and participate in the discussion.
Well, one of the things that the commission did was authorize the purchase of assistive listening devices, and those are available should anyone coming to town meeting, whether it's a town meeting member or a member of the public, should they need them, those are available in the town safety office. Of Of course, it's also helpful. It's a good way to encourage people who are deaf to get engaged and involved if you can offer CART services with real-time captioning of whatever is being said. And that's, something that certainly the commission would be happy to work with the relevant town offices on. Our town website and many of the documents on it are actually quite accessible for people who use assistive technology, way better than the landing pages and corporate websites out there, and I think the town should be really proud of that. That all also encourages people with disabilities to become involved when they feel welcome in the digital space. I once was at town meeting, but it was decades ago, but I assume that everybody uses a microphone, and so that helps as well. Yeah, it's held in a wheelchair accessible location. It has a lot going for it. But I think it's more a question of people of changing a sort of culture, and as more and more events are fully accessible, maybe people will want to be involved.
Any other questions? Yeah, go.
How did you get involved in this sphere?
I grew up in the disability community. My younger brother, had multiple disabilities, both physical, cognitive, and language-based. So I honestly can say I don't remember a time when I wasn't in close contact with people with disabilities. It's really not something I think about as a difference. It's just how some people are. And I've professionally, so that was sort of one part of it. When I was in high school, I taught swimming at a day camp for kids who were in wheelchairs and body braces, who, other than the time they were in the swimming pool, really never knew what it was like to not be surrounded with metal and leather. Professionally, I had a long career in higher education publishing, and I worked a lot on special education books, collaborating with our authors, and so forth. And then I moved into working on digital accessibility, originally from the publisher I worked with, Pearson, and now I'm an accessibility consultant specializing in digital content.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think, any other questions?
No, I think I know that Sarah Lynn Lair comes to our Council on Aging and to the Age-Friendly Cities meetings, and she talks about the projects that the commission is working on, and I'm pleased at the progress you guys seem to be making. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I see Ms. Jackson has arrived, so why don't we take her item? And this is a question of authorizing filling of a lead teacher in the Recreation Department.
Thank you so much. Good evening, members of the Select Board. My name's Lee Jackson. I'm from Recreation. Tonight I'm here to ask for your permission for authorization to hire. We currently have a lead teacher vacancy at Sewell Early Childhood Education Center, and we'd love to fill that position with a qualified candidate as soon as we can. We are a licensed program at Sewell, and we are subject to licensure requirements for ratios. And so I come to you this evening to ask for your support.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Then I'll move that we approve the authorization of the filling of the lead teacher vacancy in the Recreation Department.
Let me add one thing, since Ms. Lee is new to this position. She hasn't gotten the lecture that we sometimes people receive.
Actually, I think she has.
Okay.
You can give it to her again anyway.
Please.
Just for the record, in looking for candidates to fill this position, we expect that you will make efforts as in addition to the ones that are listed here in the form, to ensure that the diversity of your pool is as diverse as possible, so that in selecting the person to fill the position, we can truly say that we've found the best person available. So,
Yes, that is very important to us as well. We look for and support diversity in the workplace to the largest extent we can. This school focuses on diversity in terms of its curriculum as well. So it's very important to us to get that pool. So I will work diligently on that.
okay, thank you.
Okay, now I'll call for a vote to authorize the filling of the lead teacher vacancy in the Recreation Department. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco?
Aye.
Selectperson Heller?
Aye.
Selectperson Green?
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and warrant article reviews, starting with Article 5. And it's my understanding that the governor has not yet signed our liquor license bill. So what I'm going to suggest we do is hold this for another week or two. Hopefully the governor will sign it and we can just move no action and be done with it.
It's on his desk, though. He just hasn't taken any action on it, so
Okay.
we're in process.
And then we have two warrant articles. Article 17, and this is non-disclosure agreements. We had a public hearing last week. There was some sentiment on the board not to agree with this, and is there anyone else wish to say something about this?
I would.
Disagree? Okay.
Thank you, Neil. Chairman Wyszynski. I'm going to vote in the affirmative on this warrant article. I listened carefully to the petitioner and to our legal counsel. I listened to colleagues, but mostly I am listening to my inner voice. Last year, when this warrant article came before town meeting, I was supportive of the idea, but the execution needed work, so I abstained. This year, I see a more nuanced warrant article that took in feedback from both the Select Board and the Advisory Committee, and it is a better warrant article because of it. I appreciate that the petitioner listened and incorporated that information. The reason I feel the way I do are twofold. The first is that I am a woman who has been watching the Me Too movement and realize what happens when we can't openly discuss the patterns that do society harm. The second, as a select board member for the town, I want the public to feel reassured that the town is not trying to silence voices. Government has many responsibilities. It must protect the minority as well as the majority. NDAs do not allow the government to do either. It forces the victim to make a harsh choice between a remedy and a warning to others. It also has the ability to prevent patterns from being identified. Most of the information that will be disclosed should this warrant article pass is available under FOIA. I'm voting in favor of this warrant article because this issue is bigger than just the town of Brookline. It is also the right thing to do.
I'll note that all of the settlements we've entered into, and there really haven't been that many, and they haven't shown a pattern. They're kind of all over the place. They are available in redacted form, and they are out there publicly, and we do get regular FOIA requests, which are honored. What this does is it takes away a tool that we have that can help us settle cases that perhaps ought to be settled. So for that reason, I'm going to vote a recommendation of favorable action, though I do hear what you're saying.
You
And
mean no action?
No action, yes. Yes. And I'm sympathetic to the sentiments that you expressed. I just don't think this is the way to do it.
Well, I too am sympathetic to the sentiments. In thinking about this over the last week or so, it's my feeling that a lot of our emotion about this is tied up with the Me Too movement. And I believe that, in fact, when I look at it, that the Me Too movement was encouraged by the fact that the Catholic Church has gone through such revelations, successful lawsuits against it for its horrendous action in moving priests around, not reporting this, what was clearly sexual abuse, to the authorities. In the Me Too movement, a lot of the cases that have come out have been cases of a private, either a private company or the head of a company or a private individual, a celebrity usually, who has gone into has offered somebody money to keep quiet about his or her behavior. But that's not what we have. I mean, I'm thinking of Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein. But that's not what we have here. In Brookline, we've been very careful to make sure that any behaviors that are abhorrent, that are sexual harassment or discrimination or criminal in nature, retaliation, are investigated either by the police or the DA or an outside investigator, depends on the circumstances. And we've done that. We don't really have a policy about it. I read over the policy on sexual discrimination, sexual harassment, and retaliation, is what I believe it's called. And I didn't see that that was explicitly stated, that we will pursue referrals to sources, that people who investigate these criminal allegations. And so I would recommend that that is something that we look to in the future to do. In the meantime, I agree with Chair Wyszynski that this is a very valuable tool. The language, as I see it, does not allow the claimant to have privacy, to ask for an agreement. It specifies that we cannot enter into any agreement, whether it's sought by the claimant or not. So I think that, and it is an effective tool in getting us closure on a situation, on a case. I would never want to do it in a situation where there is criminal acts. We have, as I say, I believe we have taken the high road on that and always reported those when they needed to be. But, so I'm going to vote no action, and I believe that really is the right course in this particular case and with this particular wording.
I'm going to join my colleagues in voting no action. I want to just echo one thing which was stated tonight by the chair, and something that we've talked about in the past, the previous, I guess it was last week at the public hearing for this article, on this article, that these agreements that are the subject of the article are available as most documents are in municipal government to people who ask for them, sometimes in a redacted format, to protect privacy and other confidential information. So in no way are these agreements not available for public review. And I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that in light of this conversation that this article has brought up, we have made a commitment to release information about the number of agreements that are signed in a given year, and the dollar value of those agreements. Again, without talking about the specifics of any agreements that may or may not be signed. It's just sort of a, here's what's going on in terms of dollars and numbers, which is a public disclosure that something has happened. And again, if people want more information, they are free to make a request for additional information. It is something that many people in this town do, and it is their right to do so. So I respect what Select Person Hamilton said, the statement she read. On this issue, I happen to disagree with her, and I think that those proactive steps that we're taking to release information are sufficient to give me comfort that that there is an ability for people to know what's going on and to monitor the situation and raise concerns when appropriate.
I'm going to join the now majority of the board in voting no action. I also want to note that not all cases that we are faced with are clear-cut, and sometimes we need a tool to enable a claimant to, quote, what's the phrase, save face, by not having to go public with information or have the town go public with information regarding the validity of a case. You file a lawsuit, it turns out that the facts aren't really that great for you, and you want some way out, and settlement with a non-disclosure agreement is one way or one tool that a claimant can use to save face, is one way of putting it, or just get a settlement and move forward.
Okay. So I think why don't we do this positively? So I'll move a favorable action recommendation, and if you wish to vote no action, no, actually I'll do it twice. So first will be a favorable action, and then the motion will be no action.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion is for a recommendation of favorable action. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
No.
Select Person Heller.
No.
Select Person Green.
No.
Select Person Hamilton.
Yes.
And the chair votes no. Now the motion is for a no action recommendation. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
No.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. That
We've
was,
done the same thing
Double
twice.
negative.
Two different ways.
right. Make sure we got it right. Okay. Moving on to Article 23. I see the petitioner here.
I think probably maybe up to me. I
Okay, then there has been some new language on the resolve clause that's floating around. Have you seen the town administrator's language?
Yes, Jules Milner-Bragi petition regarding Article 23, and I did receive a copy from the town administrator's office, a PDF that included a description and then also the amended resolution clause at the bottom.
Does that sound okay to you?
I had some prepared remarks, if it's okay for me to speak them.
Sure, go for it.
I want to thank the town administrator, Kleckner, planning director Steinfeld, transportation engineering director Ditto, public works commissioner Papasturgian, and their staff for their expedient, thoughtful engagement with and feedback regarding Article 23. If it is the will of town meeting, through approval of this article, that the town-hosted concept and feasibility study it proposes should proceed to scope framing and budget planning as clarified in the amended version of the article's resolution text proposed by staff, I would look forward to supporting staff and any involved boards and committees in that work. I'm glad that the idea of restoring Beacon Street's historical Olmsted bridleway is being discussed here, and that further study of this idea to develop the basis of information to enable a process of rigorous Brookline community evaluation and exploration of this potential change is being considered. If I may, I would like to briefly add, reading the news this past weekend regarding the latest major report from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and specifically the panel's latest analyses that predict an even more dire timeline for significant impacts derived from greenhouse gas emissions than previously projected. That is, major crises potentially as soon as 2040. I was reminded of the urgency of moving forward and exploring changes our community could make to better support and therefore encourage adoption of super high energy efficiency, super low pollution emissions modes of day-to-day transportation, such as bicycle, scooter, wheelchair, jogging, walking, etc. If, per further study, it proves feasible to restore Beacon Street's Olmsted Bridleway as a means for substantially improving the safety and connectivity of this locally and regionally significant street's accommodation for these high-efficiency, low-impact travel modes, it seems to me that this could be precisely the kind of powerful climate action that we in Brookline need to take. Thank you.
Sounds like that's the basis of your town meeting speech. Okay, so there was a word omitted from the town administrator's original memo, so it would read, the now therefore be it resolved clause would read, now therefore be it resolved that town meeting requests that the town administrator assign staff as he deems appropriate to, here's the additional word, develop a scope of services necessary to engage a consultant to study the concept and feasibility of establishing a protected path suitable for two-way non-motorized travel along the full length of Beacon Street median in Brookline, estimate the costs associated with such study, and identify potential funding sources. Said scope would be prepared in sufficient time to be considered for inclusion in the town's FY 21 to 26 capital improvement plan. Okay, so I take it the whereas clauses remain the same, and we would just substitute the now therefore be it resolved. Any questions, comments, discussion?
Where's the advisory committee on this? Have they
I don't believe they've taken action, although I believe they're generally favorable to the, but perhaps Melissa could elaborate.
So the capital subcommittee, I think, they reviewed this earlier, and they had similar, they had tweaked the language in a similar way, trying to kind of not bind a future town meeting with funding. And, after we had our staff conversation, I think we thought, we could do a little bit more to kind of give us some flexibility to really develop this, but indicate that we do support it as well. And so this has been shared with the capital subcommittee, and the full committee will be voting on this within the next week or so.
So we can lead and suggest language to them, or we can wait and have them suggest language to us. I think there's perfectly good language here, and that we should take the lead and suggest it to them.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Live dangerously.
Thank you to both town staff and to the petitioner for working together. I think a good product resulted from it.
Yeah. Now we'll see how advisory wordsmiths this. I have a feeling this is going to be back before us for some tweaking, but that's okay. So the motion will be the whereases as originally submitted in the warrant, substituting the language that I read with a favorable action recommendation. All those in favor, please say aye. Select person Franco.
Aye.
Select person Heller.
Aye.
Select person Green.
Aye.
Select person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Good luck with advisory.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We are right on time. But I don't see the applicant here for, okay. This is the family restaurant? Or, though they're not called a family
Formerly
restaurant.
known as the family restaurant.
Howdy, come join the party. We're actually on time. Would you like to sit up here in front? Right in front. Sure, why not? Okay, so this is a transfer of license for a restaurant that's right next door almost. So this is, now it says here that the corporation is currently doing business as the Family Restaurant, but that name has, I guess technically it hadn't, or?
Yeah, so what's happening?
Why don't you come up to the mic so our vast TV audience can, and introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you. You mind if I put this down?
Sure.
Okay, thank
By all means.
So good evening. My name is Howard Goldman. I represent the applicants, Favahar, and the three individuals that are here tonight. So this is a purchase of assets of that restaurant that you mentioned. So it's an asset purchase, as well as the transfer of the various licenses, the liquor license, the common victual license, and then, of course, the entertainment license. And so you inquired about the corporate name. So what's happening is they formed their own company, an LLC, called Favahar LLC, doing business as Saffron. And saffron is a concept which I'm sure they'll be happy to share with you. Mm-hmm. And so, so that at some point, as they get up and running, the names will change. But certainly tonight we're here for the transfer application pieces. And so I'm sure you've received all the filings we have, and all three of the managers are here tonight to answer any questions or present themselves, and you may want to hear from them directly.
Yeah, so come on, tell us what you're up to. And this is your chance to market yourselves and introduce yourselves to the community.
Because we do eat.
Yeah, we and our constituency.
I hope you like Persian kebabs, because that's what we're going to do.
Okay.
The current restaurant is Turkish, mainly Turkish food. We're going to keep the Turkish food. We're going to add Persian flavor to it. We're going to have some Persian kebabs, Persian rice, Persian desserts, and so on. My name is Ali Zadeh. I have a PhD in electrical engineering, and I currently have a full-time job. So this, for me, is going to be part-time, after work, on weekends, and everything. My wife, Azadeh Zadeh, she's a very good cook. She's a very good chef. She's the one who's going to be running the place for the most part, the day-to-day activities, the face of the restaurants, welcoming people. And Arman is my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, and we are partner in this, and we're going to make this place run like clockwork.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay.
It's a great location.
Yeah.
The location is great. And it needs to be cleaned up. The floor needs to be redone. The ceiling needs to be done. The bathroom needs to be taken care of. So we're going to be taking care of those things.
So you're going to close for a period to do some renovations?
The plan is since it's mostly cosmetics, we're planning to close maybe for 3 days or 4 days. When it's not peak days, and then do the cosmetic stuff. But the bathroom itself, we are still debating that. The bathroom is kind of tricky.
Is it handicap accessible, the bathroom?
That's the thing. We keep talking about it. The door frame is, I think, it's too small for the wheelchair to get in, and it's an old restaurant. And I don't know if anything can be done to that. So that's one of the sticky points we are still debating.
Well, there's from my own experience hanging around Town Hall, I think there's an opportunity for a good lunchtime business.
Oh, yes.
So
we are thinking about kebab sandwiches. One skewer kebab in a piece of bread.
Take back to your office and eat over the typewriter.
Take it. We can deliver too. We can deliver to you guys. We can deliver.
Questions from the board?
We like to focus on the liquor license, so let me ask some questions about that. Are you aware of the Brookline specific regulations around the service of alcohol?
Yes, we actually talked to Lieutenant Raskin, I believe. Yeah, and we talked in length for hours.
So can you just talk about a few of the things that we require in the Brookline regulations? What did you learn in that conversation with Lieutenant Raskin?
Well, first of all, we need to pass tips in person, not online. We had taken that online, all of us spent all those hours online to pass that test, and then we said we have to do this. So when was it? A few days ago. Few days ago, we went downtown Boston and got the TIPS certificate in person, and that's going to be mailed to us. That's one thing. And all the one person who has the license needs to be at the premises at all times. We need to have the book
The logbook, yeah.
at hand. Put all our documents in there, whoever that's certified in there, some other templates that he said I need to get from somewhere. I have the address. I need to get it from there and put it in the binder. Incident report.
You passed the test.
You passed the test. Thank you very much. I mean, clearly you've taken it seriously.
Oh, yes.
We take it very seriously, and I'm sure Lieutenant Raskin mentioned this to you, and we're going to warn you that we do stings.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, my name is Arman, just as Ali introduced us. Just the funny part is because the TIP classes we has to take in, the instructor is specifically called Brookline Town, which was sued once because of, I don't know, back then probably. And between all the towns in, Massachusetts, he was just keep talking about Brookline. I'm like, I told Ari, oh my God, I think this is going to be
They said Massachusetts is the toughest state. Brookline is the
is
toughest city in Massachusetts.
And remember, you're only a few doors down from the police station.
No, the good part is just, we learn about this every time we are having any sort of, for example, crowd. We can just, nicely ask police department to help us to manage the crowd, to manage the to just be on side of us, and they're just they're not standing to see what we're doing. They want to help us. Everything goes smoothly. That's the really.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. We're here to help.
Okay, now that you're here for the tour, can I ask a question?
Sure. That doesn't mean we're going to answer it.
One of the current owners, Ahmed, has a very bad foot, and he's limping all the time. He's in pain, and he wants to get out as soon as possible. And every time we go there, he keeps saying, "When are you guys going to close?" He wants to get out. And from what I hear, hopefully after we get approved from here. When documents go to ABBC, it takes 6 to 8 weeks, I don't know how long. So we were thinking if it is possible to take the restaurant over from them and run it as Anatolia or family restaurant as it is. And Ahmed, one of the owners, said, "Yeah, he's going to come, because he's got the, he has the license there. He's going to come and be at the place for us to run it." And we were thinking about actually making this happen a lot sooner than later.
So technically,
So you're suggesting that this be made effective.
they take over the existing restaurant, run it as the existing restaurant.
Yeah, so in other words, I guess we're distinguishing, if I may, the operation of the restaurant versus the liquor sales. As it turns out, liquor sales are quite small, but clearly that to have any liquor at all requires on-site the manager at all times.
Right.
And obviously in the morning there's no liquor sold, but certainly in the afternoon and more in the evening, there's some sales. Yeah. So what we're talking, buyer and seller, we're talking between ourselves whether we can, because of the bad health of one of the owners, to have a situation where they're actually running the business, but not changing it. Of course, this would require basically almost a two-phase closing, and the concern is it gets a little complicated, and what if the ABCC doesn't approve, and all those things. So, you know, in all candor, Ali is presenting it to the board to get your take.
The only sticking point is the liquor license. You know, the restaurant piece, I'm told, can happen immediately.
Of course, you still need the common victual license.
Well, we would just, that's us.
We'll grant it tonight.
We give you that.
Right.
So that's easy.
Now, what about this idea? No alcohol sales at the time. Put it on the sign, on the door, and we don't sell alcohol until our license comes through.
That solves the problem. Yeah,
Right?
that solves it.
And that would invalidate the license or put it in a freeze or some unusual touch point to that, or get us in a snag with the ABCC. Yeah, I mean, they're, again, the liquor sales are small. They hope over time with their enhanced menu and some great ideas they have to change that. But in the interim, try to accommodate the sellers, and also because these folks are quite anxious to get in there to run the restaurant without alcohol sales.
Well, that happens frequently, actually. You can run the restaurant without the alcohol beverage sales.
Great.
Oh, we don't want to revoke the alcohol license. We want to keep it. but
Well,
it
you've
will
applied
have
to
be
transfer it
disapproved.
tonight, yeah.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
so we'll approve that, and then
But it won't become effective until the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission, but you can run the restaurant beginning tomorrow.
Great.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Is that what you're looking to do?
Yeah, well, not so much tomorrow, but.
But that's great.
The option.
You know, and just talking
That's
out loud,
great.
so in other words,
That's great.
in the highly unlikely event that the ABCC has an issue, and who knows what that might be, it's so unlikely, but in the event that that happens,
Okay.
there's value to the liquor
Right.
license as part of their sale.
So what's before us is actually 3 votes.
Yes.
The first is the transfer of the liquor license. The second vote is the common victular and entertainment license, and the third is the alternate managers. So the common victular, that could take effect tonight, tomorrow. So, and then the liquor license transfer, that would be contingent on ABCC.
Yes.
So sounds like you can do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So in terms of the processing, God willing, we get an approval tonight for the common victular, then it's a question of processing paper with Dawn over at the licensing and ultimately paying a fee.
Yes.
And then once that is presented.
Yeah, typically there's some final inspections, Health Department and others, before you actually open. I'm sure that they'll want to inspect.
For sure, and so we'll coordinate with, is it the building department or is it all through the licensing?
I think Dawn can handle
She
it.
can help, okay. And so then that they're able to operate under this new company name, Favre.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And then we get the issue, well, internally is we wanted to make some renovations. At what point you close it down, but we can deal with that later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's your thing.
We're gonna make you guys happy. I'm the good chef. I trust myself.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, tell us what,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
I just want,
Okay, so I usually ask applicants this question, and I'm wanting to ask you. What kind of policy are you going to set about whom you will card?
Oh, well, the young people, usually the people that look younger than 40, they say.
How can you tell?
It's just an estimate,
I could be younger than 40.
Absolutely.
It's just maybe the way they act.
That was a trick question.
Maybe the way they act. People who are underage also, if they want white alcohol, they kind of act a little, out of place and not comfortable.
Be careful.
So is there a suggestion that you'd like to bring forth?
Well, I know, and I'm always thrilled when somebody checks my ID. But, I think the safest way to do it is to just check everybody.
Yeah.
That's just your
Exactly.
policy.
Check everybody.
You're just checking everybody, and it doesn't matter if they have
Most
gray
people
hair or
don't
not.
mind.
Most people don't mind.
So for example, if we go to Fenway Park, everybody gets checked.
Yeah.
And you say, and as you said, when I get checked, I said, well, thank you very much. I would say it's a little more traditional. I mean, for example, I was at a restaurant last night in Brookline, eating at a Indian restaurant, and I wasn't carded. And, you know, and so I would say it's quite customary, and when you're looking at my age, probably not to be carded. Whereas at Fenway Park, the rules are tougher. So we'd like to get your guidance. And that's what we're here.
I've given you my idea, but it's,
No,
you know,
that's a
it's
good
clearly
idea.
up to you. But
Everybody,
you have to understand, we will be doing stings, so if you miss somebody, then it's on your head and not ours.
At least we make somebody happy if we check their card.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you don't want to put on your waiter or waitress the responsibility of determining whether someone is less than 40 or possibly, you know, underage, et cetera. So that's, take that off their shoulders. My question is, what is the difference between Turkish cuisine and Persian cuisine? I'm fascinated. I want to know.
The difference is saffron.
Saffron.
Yes. We can add saffron as a taste, as a spice to it, and can give the taste of
Well, we had a long conversation over this. It's just, you know, we're not trying to specifically call any sort of nationality, but our main goal is we serve most likely Mediterranean dish, which is Turkish food is included, Greek restaurant, it used to be Greek restaurant before that, and Persian food is just, you know, all sort of them, they just, you know, kind of alike, but the taste and serve and the look is a little different. But that could be just, you know, really good call. This is a really great town. Brookline is full of many nationalities, and it's just, you know, everybody like to try new sort of nationality food, sort of new dishes and new ideas. I mean, that's all we're looking forward.
Sure.
So getting back to the renovation, especially the bathroom, you guys are not the first to encounter, you know, the obstacle of inheriting an older building that has an inaccessible bathroom. So I would encourage you to reach out to groups in town that would love to help you come up with a remedy. So there's a commission on disability, and they might be able to assist you in evaluating your options.
Mm-hmm. So it has to be wheelchair accessible even for...
Well, so it seems to me that because they're not making substantial renovations, I think the cutoff is 100,000.
Right, so you might not trigger...
Right, so that can be mandated. And obviously if it's accessible, then perhaps you can drive more traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sometimes in older structures not easy, especially involves structural
Oh, absolutely.
columns.
But I would still encourage you to seek
reach out.
input from groups that might have some pretty good ideas that have been done elsewhere.
I think it's a good suggestion, but just to be clear among ourselves that this is not a mandate.
No.
Because to get through the approval process of making the bathrooms accessible, handicap accessible, could take weeks, if not months.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know, there are situations they want to get in, and there's several ways to get out. So, but that's a great suggestion, to reach out, to get some input and to, you know, to try to work with them.
Just technical clarification. I have 3 names here listed as alternate managers, and I don't have a manager listed in the vote, but the application has ASDA as the manager. Okay, so the vote should be for ASDA? ASDA, okay, as the manager, and then Ali and Armin as the alternate.
Precisely.
Okay.
I think that last minute change was made with the officer on the phone, so if the paperwork didn't catch up, we apologize.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so, a lot of words here. Let me frame the vote. So I'll move that we approve the application of Farvahar LLC, doing business as Saffron, for a transfer of the liquor license from Cousins Restaurant Corporation, doing business as the family restaurant, holder of a 7-day wine and malt beverage common victualers license at 305 Washington Street. The proposed hours of operation are Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 1 a.m., Sunday, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. Proposed alcohol service hours are Monday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m., and Sunday, 12 p.m. to 11 p.m. I'll also move that we approve the application of Favahar LLC, doing business as Saffron, for a common vitular and entertainment radio tape music and television license at 305 Washington Street. Inside seating capacity is 60. And I'll also move that we approve the applications of Favahar LLC, doing business as Saffron, at 305 Washington Street for the following manager: Azada Zeta, and alternate managers Ali Zeta and Armin Manshadi. This is a public hearing. If there's any members of the public who wishes to speak, this is now your time. Okay, up. Come on up.
Oh, should we sit? Maybe sit.
Yeah.
This is 30 seconds.
But, yeah, okay, well, I'll just repeat the question.
Okay, loud enough. Just to follow up a suggestion down there, the State Architectural Access Commission may be able to give you a lot of good advice on what to do, how to do it. You might also check with the Massachusetts Historical Society. I don't know how much they get involved in this, but again, they deal with old buildings all the time, so this may be a problem that they see or run into. So they might be able to help you, but the State Architectural Access Commission, I think, would be a very good way to get basically very good advice that could assist you,
Okay.
not just go around restaurant by restaurant,
Right.
friend of a friend kind of thing.
So
Bring
right.
official information and help them with compliance or whatever they may be.
Sure. So the suggestion was to consult with the State Architectural Access Board.
State Architectural Access.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, as part of that.
Sure.
We discussed the concept of sort of interim or not, so we can.
I don't think this covered,
You got the common victual license, so.
yeah, you've got the,
You can,
so the middle vote is the common victual license. That takes,
Okay, and that would be issued henceforth?
yeah,
Okay.
as soon as you pay the fee, and actually you'll need probably a health department inspection.
Right, okay, so we'll coordinate that piece. Okay, so just so it's clear on the record that able to operate the restaurant under the new name.
Right.
But, and we'll.
Without liquor.
Without liquor, and we'll have some clear signs, no liquor, we'll come up with some verbiage during that interim period.
Right.
Great.
Okay, so, I'm not reading the motion again.
we remember it.
All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Good luck.
Great, thank you all very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We now have a public hearing on the petition of NStar Electric, doing business as Eversource, to do some digging on Cleveland Road for about 521 feet, Heath Street for 270 feet, and Laurel Road, 178 feet, and St. Paul Street near Beacon for 147 feet. Howdy.
Good evening. My name is Rick Schiffoni from Eversource Electric.
And I'm Katie Flaherty from Eversource.
Okay, so what's happening?
Okay, we'll just take them one at a time.
Sure.
We'll start out with Cleveland.
Go for it.
Okay. The existing electrical infrastructure in Cleveland is what we call split fiber. It's an old-style system that has a lot of problems with failure and burning. And this petition is to install a manhole and conduit system in Cleveland so we can pull cables through conduit instead of just having the fiber directly buried in the street. It's a much safer system, much more reliable system. But to do so, we'll need a new grant for the entire new infrastructure.
So this is Cleveland Road, so the impact, I'm looking for the Cleveland Road.
This split fiber work is done in multiple phases, where the first phase is the civil phase, where we install all the civil infrastructure. Then we'll come back a few months later, maybe next spring, and we'll pull cables and put transformers in the manholes. And then, after that's all set and tested, then we'll do what we call cutovers. We'll cut over each person's individual service from the old system to the new.
So the electrical infrastructure on Cleveland is underground currently?
Correct.
Okay. And so I'm saying, so that it says estimated start date, summer 2018. That's passed.
Yeah, we didn't quite make that.
So when are you looking to start before winter?
We would like to get in before the moratorium and at least get the civil infrastructure in before the winter comes. That way there we can schedule the electrical infrastructure work in the spring.
Okay. And then the impact on the residents, so all the work is daytime?
Correct.
Is this noisy kind of work?
It's excavation, this portion will be, so there will be some noise.
Okay. Any questions on this one? This is about 2 weeks expected duration, according to your application?
Correct.
Well, I'll ask my usual questions when this type of request comes before us, and we're concerned in Brookline about gas leaks. And every time a street is being accessed underground, we want to know, have you coordinated with National Grid? First of all, are there leaks in the area? If you know of those, maybe Mr. Ditto can weigh in on this. And have you contacted National Grid to do the work that they need to do to fix the leaks in that area while the street is open and people are working on it?
As part of the process that we do is we go to every utility that's in the street to be able to draw up the plans to see what's in there and avoid any close proximity to the gas if possible. You know, there will be some lateral cutovers to serve houses that's going to go on, but those are smaller pipes compared to a duct bank that's going down the middle of the street. We'll go through the normal dig safe routine before we do any work out there for notifications of other utilities and what's going in there. Do I know the gas company has no problems? I don't know that. I wouldn't know the exact status of their repairs in the area.
Would your conduit have access to any gas lines that were in the street there?
No, we would avoid any of the gas.
Oh, no, but so if you wanted to allow NSTAR to use your manhole to get into...
National Grid.
I'm sorry, National Grid. To get into their gas lines, is that possible, or?
No, that wouldn't be possible. Our manholes and duct banks, it's a sealed system, that only electrical conduit can go in those lines.
Got it.
Okay, we'll do these one at a time. So this is a public hearing. If there's anyone who wishes to speak on Cleveland Road, I see none. So why don't I take the vote, and then we'll move on. So I'll move that we approve the application of NSTAR Electric Company doing business as Eversource for permission to construct the location for line of conducts and manholes with the necessary cables therein under the Cleveland Road, conduit northwesterly.
I'm sorry, could I ask
Yep,
one more
sure.
question of Mr. Ditto? Do you know of any gas leaks in the area?
I do not, and I haven't had time to write to Mr. Barkus over at National Grid, that I will take care of that tomorrow to see if he can respond to any queries about leaks on these proposed streets.
Okay. So I'll move that we approve the the grant for Cleveland Road, a conduit northwesterly from existing manhole 17043 at the intersection with Elliott Street, thence turning, running westerly a distance of about 521 feet, and two manholes, 30586 and 30587. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next up is Heath Street, and this is about 270 feet near Hammond, a distance of about 121 feet. 1120. Okay. So this is, which side of Hammond is this on? Is this near the Baldwin School? Because we are going to be building a school there. So we wouldn't want to be doing double work.
There's no plan. I don't
It's
see
on
it.
the west side of Hammond Street, so it's near the.
That's on the other side, okay. Okay, so this isn't impacted by the anticipated school project. Okay? So the impact on this one is, do we know how long this one is going to take? It's not on the application.
This one would be about a week and a half's worth of work.
Okay.
It's a smaller scope job. It's going to impact 6 houses that are going to also get converted from split fiber to a duct and conduit system.
Okay. And you're hoping to get in there before the end of the construction season?
Correct. The civil portion to be done in the fall with the electrical portion to follow after that.
Okay. Any questions from the board? This is a public hearing. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this, now is your time. I see none. So I'll move that we approve the grant with the language I read earlier for Heath Street, a conduit southwesterly from existing manhole 2664, approximately 270 feet southwest of Hammond Street, a distance of about 121 feet, and one new manhole numbered 30225. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And now Laurel Road, and this is 178 feet, and this is from near Cedar Road to 76 Laurel Road. And
11-7 for those following along at home.
oh, and this one has a drawing. So this is, the customer has already installed the conduit. So is there any work that needs to be done? This is just legalizing what's been done?
Exactly. This
Okay.
one here, to be honest with you, when the drawing first came through, we thought it was all on private property, the back of the pole being on private property, which it wasn't, so we are in the public way. So Eversource is going to take ownership of everything in the public way, and we're here to get a grant location to make that all right.
Okay. Mr. Ditto, you good with this?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Any members of the public who wish to comment on this? I see none. So I'll move that we grant the location with the language I read earlier on Laurel Road, conduit northwesterly from pole 22510, approximately 178 feet northwest of Cedar Road, a distance of about 74 feet to 76 Laurel Road. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And last up is St. Paul Street, and this is starting around Beacon Street, and then on the northern side of St. Paul, about 147 feet, and this is over by the hotel, I presume. Is that right, Mr. Ditto? Yes. And what's happening here? What page is that on?
1114.
1114. Install sidewalk manhole for installation of a new switch. And 3 days, day shift. So this is going to be on the sidewalk.
Correct.
So this has no impact on traffic.
No, these are reliability switches, so we're able to safely go into the sidewalk, change the direction of electricity to feed from different directions.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
I just noticed that there's going to be service interruption for a somewhat significant amount of time, and curious to know how customers will be notified. Is it a mailing? Is it a door hanger? What's the operating procedure for you guys?
It's both. They'll get an automatic mailing. We have to pull what we call a permit internally to take electricity out, and it notifies all the affected customers ahead of time, and then our crews notify the customers when they're ready to do the work.
Okay. Any members of the public wish to comment on this public hearing? I see none. So I will move that we issue the grant with the language I read earlier. On St. Paul Street, a conduit easterly from the existing manhole, 3652 at the intersection with Beacon Street, thence turning and running northerly a distance of about 147 feet to a new manhole, 30417. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay. I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll come back and we'll hear the warrant articles. schematic phase for both the Driscoll and the Baldwin projects. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I just want to spend a few minutes taking you through both the need for the expansion projects and an update on work done to date relative to those projects. And I want to remind everyone, I think this board needs no reminding, but I want to remind everyone who may be watching that these two projects are part of a three-pronged solution that the Select Board, the School Committee, and the Ad Hoc Subcommittee of Advisory voted in favor of last June, which was, again, that three-pronged approach of Baldwin expansion renovation, Driscoll expansion renovation, and pursuing an MSBA partnership for a Pierce expansion renovation project. This presentation obviously focuses on Baldwin and Driscoll projects, but I will, before I'm finished, just give a very brief update on where the process is relative to Pierce and pursuing partnership with the MSBA. Now for the Select Board, just as a reminder of enrollment growth, now this is not the full enrollment report. I do want to make clear that the last year's full enrollment report is on the website. This is the prior 5 years and 5 years out. So it shows the growth of K through 8. Again, this is only K through 8. This does not include high school enrollment. And it shows the growth prior 5 years from 5,067 to 5,482, and projected increase from over the next 5 years from 5,482 to 5,856. Just so for the Select Board to know, we, based on feedback and questions that have come up over the past really year, we are engaging in an in-depth analysis of the T districts, T zones, and potential implications of that. We're also analyzing in this year's enrollment report, which will come out in the next 2 months, at least an initial draft of it, any new developments, and we're looking again at the student multiplier, as it were, for Hancock Village in particular, as the question was raised at advisory, really a statement that Hancock Village has a higher student per unit rate than other developments. And so last year's enrollment report has a town-wide average, and we would want to explore that to see if our analysis of Hancock Village is accurate or if it should be higher.
Just for the public, a T-zone is a two-family zone. So if you have a single-family house in a two-family zone, then if a lot is a certain size, it can be developed by right from a single-family to a two-family, and that's we're seeing some of that going on in town, but there's a lot of opportunity for a lot more of that to happen, and it's just something we need to be aware of and plan for.
Thank you. Another way to look at the growth since 2005 is in this chart. And so you can see our 8 K-8 schools from Baker through Runkle. And if you look at the final column, you can see the percentage growth at each school since 2005, seeing that Baker having the smallest percentage growth from 18% over that time period to Driscoll, which has had a 67% growth in that time period. Just as I always do when I talk about this chart and the percent growth, just important to note that when Hancock Village began renovation of its existing units, several years ago, several years before I started as superintendent, in fact, Hancock Village, or Baker saw a 50-student drop in enrollment. And those renovations are nearing completion, but they are ongoing. So it's something that we watch carefully relative to the enrollment at Baker. Another way to look at this, and an important way to look at it, is if you look at the 4 schools highlighted in blue in 2005, 2006, Driscoll, Heath, Lincoln, and Runkle. They were all 2-section schools at the time. And the growth that we have seen since that 2005-2006 school year is 1,578 students overall. And that is the equivalent of those 4 schools, those 4 two-section schools being added. So you often hear that 1,500 is the equivalent of 2 Lawrence schools over that time period. It is also the equivalent of adding, in 2005-2006 numbers, the equivalent of Driscoll, Heath, Lincoln, and Runkle. Those 4 two-section schools at the time. So it's just another way to think about and understand how monumental this growth has been. And important to remember, for everyone to remember, that 1578 has been absorbed into our existing infrastructure with only some small rentals added in that time period, a slight expansion, of course, at Heath, and the Runkle renovation project, which took Runkle to a 3-section school. So there have been some projects in that time period, but certainly not enough to absorb adequately the 1,578 students who've been added. Now, all of this brings us to the town-wide challenge, and I apologize, the title is at the top of the screen, but this slide is, the title is Town-Wide Challenge. And so the first is that ongoing enrollment growth that we've seen since 2005, so I won't repeat that. We have overdue renovation and updating of facilities needed, in particular at Driscoll and Pierce. I will say that the building department has consistently focused on those schools and done work from roof to windows to HVAC to electrical upgrades, but in the end that has kept up with the infrastructure needs of the school at a certain pace, but certainly not what we would fully want. And the facilities are overall quite outdated. In all of our schools, the core facilities, well, not all, in 7 of our 8, we can no longer say all with Coolidge Corner opening, but in 7 of our 8 K-8 schools, all the core facilities are inadequate. So our gyms, our libraries, cafeterias, and our hallways can't handle the current student population. This results in lunches starting as early as 10:15, 10:20, and ending at 1 o'clock. That's Driscoll's schedule. Lunch begins at 10:15. At Pierce, it starts a little bit later, but there are no defined lunch periods at Pierce. There's just a constant flow of students in and out over that 3 to 4 hour time block. We have substandard spaces in all of our schools, again, except for Coolidge Corner. And that includes our second most newly renovated school at Runkle. As enrollment has continued to grow, this has impacted Runkle as well, where we have classrooms converted out of former offices. We have hallways, the ends of hallways that have been capped off into classroom spaces. For example, at the Lincoln School, we have locker rooms that have been converted into either small learning spaces or offices and so forth. And we see those conditions in all of our schools. In fact, at Driscoll School, some old former bathrooms have been converted into office space as those bathrooms have been taken offline. We also have temporary rentals used for K-8, both at Pierce and Baker, Baker being the 2 modular classrooms, and at Pierce, of course, being the Pierce Loft, 62 Harvard. And then over this period of time, 11 of our early childhood classrooms have landed in rental space. And so that has come both as a significant disruption to the early childhood program and significant cost to the town as the space for Beep Beacon and Beep Putterham have been rented for many years now. Now, Driscoll specifically, you have a cafeteria that's too small with lunch starting before 10:30. You have an auditorium and theater that can no longer hold more than 2 grades at once, and so you can't even have a third of the school meeting at one time in that auditorium theater. Driscoll has the smallest gymnasium of any of our schools and does not have a functioning multi-purpose room. On the building maps, if you look at the B-space map, for example, there's a space that's labeled as multi-purpose, but what it is a converted locker room where the floor and the walls have been carpeted. You can do yoga in there and some very basic physical fitness activities, but that is the extent of what you can do. And so it is not a functioning multi-purpose space to supplement the gym that some of our other schools have. You have the field that's not regularly usable because of wet or muddy conditions. In fact, last week, I believe 4 out of the 5 days the field was offline because of rain, or the day after rain where the field was still wet. You don't have community space for the school to come together. Woefully undersized middle school classrooms and science labs. The science labs at Driscoll are particularly constrained with the experiments that can be run because they are more than half the size of a standard MSBA science room. You have a nursing area that's too small, parking and drop-off challenges both on Washington Street and Westbourne Terrace. And we have a lack of available swing space during construction as Brookline High School will be moving into Old Lincoln School in September. This is a reminder what I opened the presentation with, the town-wide solution that the 3 boards voted in this room on June 13th. In terms of new classrooms, now this is not renovated classrooms. This does not include the replacement of leased classrooms, but additional capacity beyond what we have now. You would have 18 additional classrooms for the Baldwin expansion, 8 additional classrooms through the Driscoll renovation expansion, and 4 additional classrooms through the Pierce renovation expansion. Now again, that does not include at Pierce, the assumption would be a replacement also for the rental spaces, but in terms of new capacity through these projects, I wanted to capture what the actual new capacity would be. You may ask for Driscoll, why only 8 if we're adding a full section or we're proposing adding a full section? That's because the 3rd grade at the 4th grade this year at Driscoll is so large that it had to be expanded last year from 3 sections in 3rd grade, from 3 sections to 4, which then required moving the art room and some other spaces. And so, again, that is not to say that that space that was found is adequate in size, but there is a designated classroom. So this slide captures what the new capacity would be. In terms of the Baldwin expansion and what town-wide challenges this would address, it addresses over-enrollment and overcrowding, in particular at Baker and Heath, which then relieve pressure at subsequent schools. So you start seeing relief from Lincoln, Runkle, and Driscoll through that. It provides significantly more capacity for 2 of our fastest growing district-wide programs. Our RISE program for students with autism and our English Learner program. It's important to note that the English Learner program has grown by over 300 students in the last 6 years. This year we saw 476, I believe, new registrations in July and August, and approximately 375 of those new registrations were students who needed to be assessed for English language support. And so it is a growing number. We have over 900 English learners now in the district in our K-8 schools. It helps address the overcrowding in other schools. As I mentioned at the first bullet, it relieves the use of substandard spaces and as classrooms and other learning spaces, and it would add 3 early childhood classrooms, 3 BEEP classrooms, reducing our reliance on rental space.
But you skipped a bullet that it brings an existing school property fully back online to support the town-wide solution.
Thank you. So the Baldwin School Building was taken offline as a school building when Prop 2.5 passed. As a school building, K-8, it has served since then in various capacities, so it has not been shuttered at that time period. Currently serving the high school and an alternative ed program and a staff child care program. But that is an important bullet, so thank you, Chair Wyszynski, that this project would bring fully back online a school building that has been around for the better part of a century, and because of the impact in the town of Prop 2.5 in the early 80s, was a school that at that time was pulled back from for its full use. Now, in terms of the design feasibility phase, this is an update of what has happened since the boards had their vote in early June. And so this has included the introduction of design feasibility on June 21st and 22nd at Driscoll, September 11th and 18th, Jonathan Levy meeting with Driscoll staff, Jonathan Levy and his entire team meeting with staff. I should say over the summer, in between the June meeting and the September meetings, the committee of 7 met, designers were selected, so there was a great deal of work that happened supported by the building department in the selection of Jonathan Levy architects for these projects. In mid-September, initiated a review of the Baldwin School area traffic study, the review of the initial traffic study and an expanded traffic study for that area, as well as initiated a legal review of the Baldwin School property. September 20th, Baldwin and Driscoll School Building Committee members were appointed by this board. And that was followed by, on September 22nd, by an education visioning session with Driscoll. This was a Saturday session that about 25 members of the Driscoll community attended, that then led into a September 25th Neighborhood Community Forum. Chair Wyszynski attended and was very well attended by members of the Driscoll community. About 20 to 25% of neighbors that do not have students in the school and did not have children in the school, and then evenly split between current parents and former parents at Driscoll. So it was a good representation of varied perspectives at that kickoff neighborhood meeting. And then September 27th, the Baldwin School Building Committee meeting, the first one took place at Town Hall. Now, in terms of deliverables, you're considering tonight the 2 warrant articles for the release of schematic dollars. And this lays out for both projects between now and the end of November or early December deliverables for these projects. And so for the Baldwin project, that includes legal updates, the refined building program, preliminary traffic reports, cost estimates, some revised alternative design strategies, recommended preferred designs, and then leading to selection of one preferred design. A similar path for Driscoll is understanding the existing conditions. The architect and consultants are working on that. Program design, some pre-schematic alternative design strategies, which I will actually share with this board, some of the initial thinking for the Driscoll project later on in this presentation. Traffic update, leading to a traffic report, cost estimates, and the recommended preferred design. A lot of work is happening with various town departments to understand everything on the Driscoll property as well, so including easements. There are 2 small easements on 2 corners of the property that do not affect any of the design. There's a culvert under the building, which Peter Ditto in the engineering department and Aaron Galantine in Parks and Open Space are working together to analyze both the history of that culvert and to answer the fact that it can be moved as a part of the project if the building were, depending on what project was decided upon for that building. So specific to traffic and legal, this is a highlight of what I have already shared. So of course the preliminary traffic reports anticipated by the end of the month, summary and guidance for legal expected mid this month, and that includes a requested review of the Baldwin School playground allowable use by outside counsel, and the development of a plan to build entirely on the school-owned property, which minimizes any Article 97 concerns. And Driscoll, similarly, a preliminary traffic report by early November. Traffic counts are happening later this week, not tomorrow, because tomorrow is walk to school day. So the consultants will not be doing traffic counts around Driscoll tomorrow. And then working closely with the transportation department. And as I had mentioned, we're working with various town departments to understand any possible legal constraints for the Driscoll property. This shows just sort of some of the technical work that needs to be done, what has been completed. You can see a lot of that has been completed for the Baldwin project, and it is in progress for Driscoll. Now, I want to share just briefly with the board a couple of the preliminary design concepts for this, for the Driscoll School project. And so you have 5 options. Option A and B, expand and renovate the existing building. And so you can see at the top, option A, it's actually listed A and B, and C and D. excuse me. But the top left option, it renovates the existing building. That's the building, 2/3 of it, 3/4 of it, from left to right, and then builds some new capacity, a new building. That's sort of the accordion shape to the right. That this just isn't working. Oh, there you go. This being new construction, so this would be the existing building. This new construction, this is where the gym currently is. And so this is the existing open space and parking area. This option CD would renovate this part of the building, take down the gym, the current gym which is here, and actually turn the renovation here. And so you, again, would maintain a fair amount of the open space, transferring some of what was here for the playground over to here. I'm sorry? I have bigger versions coming up. Options E, F, and G at the bottom are actually options that the architect, that Jonathan Levy and his team are pursuing to understand what are the possibilities of actually building a completely new building on the play area next to the building, and then building a new park where the existing property is. This is actually a full soccer field, moving the tennis courts from this corner of the property to this corner of the property, and gaining some open space and some play areas around the building, depending on the configuration. So these, of course, are test concepts, but I felt important to share with the board that really all options are under consideration.
Let me just jump
for this
in,
project.
Superintendent Bott. The difference, actually, okay, so there are two flavors of the option you see before you, options C and D. Both entail a renovation of the existing building. The difference between C and D is the degree of renovation and expansion of the existing building. So option C is being labeled a code renovation, so it's much less renovation, but it leaves a lot of what's considered today substandard spaces in place. And option D right sizes all of the spaces and is a more involved renovation and would be much more expensive, obviously.
Yeah, it's actually quite, thank you for saying that. It's actually quite similar to the high school project. When you get over a very small threshold in terms of renovation, you then kick in all the code compliance. And as a 100-year-old masonry building, the new seismic codes, for all intents and purposes, require a rebuild of much of the building, which increases the cost significantly for that renovation. And you can't actually address the substandard spaces in the existing building without triggering that threshold for the full cost compliance. And so it's really the difference in those options between a brand new space and a very light renovation with very little done to address the substandard spaces versus a full renovation of the existing building. And this is just one of the options, so you can see it a little bit more closely. That the architect is exploring. So you both have this, a large field. You have the opportunity for play structure here. You have a front entrance that actually moves the front entrance off of Washington Street, as well as an entrance. And sort of an interesting concept is what now is a large, long building that divides this part of the neighborhood at least. It opens this up with a park. And so again, all options to be considered, but I felt important to share with this board that the school building committee and the architects are exploring multiple options. And again, for the sake of time, I only included this one slide. The architect has, in those smaller thumbnails, two other concepts for a new construction.
To me, the exciting thing about this concept is it kind of flips the orientation of the site. So your main entrance is on the busy commercial street, not on the quiet residential street. And then the park is now on the quiet residential street rather than the busy commercial street. So to me, this is very interesting.
Yeah, one other thing that I'll add along that vein that the architect has pointed out is that you have a significant mass of the building here that now fronts Westbourne Terrace next to these commercial properties. And so you pull the mass of the building away from Westbourne Terrace in these different concepts. So ongoing outreach. So there are a number of meetings set up. So for the Baldwin project, a focus group meeting later this week with RISE families. On the 15th with RISE staff. That on Monday, a transportation board meeting to submit a proposal for staff parking, staff on-street parking. A neighborhood community forum next Wednesday, the 17th. A second neighborhood community forum tentatively scheduled for November 1st at Sewell. And then throughout October and November, the co-chairs scheduling meetings with Baldwin abutters and neighbors. For the Driscoll School project tonight, meeting updating the Parks and Recreation Commission. On the 29th, another neighborhood community forum at Driscoll School. November 26th, yet another neighborhood community forum. And throughout October and November, focus group meetings with Driscoll staff and meetings with Driscoll abutters and neighbors. Now, just as a reminder to the board, what schematic design does is it goes through the details of the project. It is not construction documents, but it answers all the questions about program verification, existing conditions, design refinement, and cost. And so at the end of schematic, we get the budget amount for the project. And we obviously just went through that in the BHS expansion project. And the differences in feasibility, you get these types of drawings, the test fit that fit the square footage, whether it's in 2 or 3 stories, and how does that fit on the site. And so you get, of course, testing different options, these squares on the left, and then some refinement, but again, very general on the right. And that leads into more specific design of floor plans, and exterior design, and sort of how the exterior interacts with the rest of the site, the open space, neighboring properties, etc. It is not, of course, the full construction design drawings where the mechanicals are put in, and et cetera, et cetera. So an ambitious timeline, to be sure, but a timeline that gets us from now to the fall of 2020 with student occupancy in both projects. It does require hitting these milestones to achieve that. So again, it's an ambitious timeline. Of course, swing space, you see about 2/3 of the way down. That's a challenge for the Driscoll project, not a challenge for the Baldwin project. But in particular, the Driscoll project, when do we need swing space? When might we need swing space? And how would that coincide with the high school's use of the swing space at Old Lincoln? So, and this is the slide that you have seen before. I'm going to go back to it. And then just all of this information and all of the documents from all the meetings are on these 2 different websites for the Driscoll expansion and Baldwin expansion.
So if you go back 2 slides, that one. There's a missing piece at the top, which is the November 2018 town meeting vote to release schematic money. And then the town meeting vote and the townwide referendum vote should be flipped. So the townwide referendum would be before the town meeting vote. Town meeting vote would be based on the townwide referendum. Assuming that passed, that would be the authorization to bond and go ahead. So now I know there's been a lot of concern about the use of the playground in the back, and we've received rather long letters from attorneys representing certain neighbors. So Select Person Green has a statement to read.
So as Chair Wyszynski mentioned,
One of the big issues at the Baldwin site is the issue of whether school children will be allowed to use the playground adjacent to the Baldwin School. Co-chair Julie Schreiner-Oldham and I focused on that issue to begin to come up with some answers to those questions. And this is the report of Julie and I on that question at this point. In connection with previous plans for the wider Baldwin site, the legal issues relative to the use of the Baldwin Playground raised by the 1976 Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund, LWCF, grant and Article 97 were previously considered by Town Council, the Select Board, the School Committee, Park and Recreation Commission, and other town agencies with the assistance of Special Town Council. With Council, the town bodies reviewed the LWCF project agreement, related documents, National Park Service guidance documents, then relevant cases, and as they became available, subsequently decided cases, and the historical use of the Baldwin Playground over time, including in 1975 to 1976, when the LWCF grant was applied for, accepted, and used. Based on the previous examination of these issues, updated analyses and communication with the National Park Service, Town Council, and Special Council, advised the co-chairs of the Baldwin Building Committee that the National Park Service interpretation of the LWCF project agreement and National Park Service guidance documents prohibits anything that would be deemed a, quote, conversion of the Baldwin Playground from its current public outdoor recreation use to another inconsistent use. Based on that advice, the co-chairs of the Baldwin Building Committee consulted with the design professionals associated with the project and the school committee, or the school district, and we are satisfied that the current plans for the Baldwin School would not result in a conversion of the Baldwin Playground. Okay, those plans are as follows. Using the Baldwin Playground on a non-exclusive basis for outdoor recess and physical education while school is in session, maintaining the open grounds of the Baldwin Playground without any additional fencing, building structures, or other impediments to public use for outdoor recreation, similar to the Longwood Park used by the Lawrence School and other parks adjacent to Brookline Public Schools, preserving existing mature trees on the Baldwin Playground site, replacing certain existing play and other structures with modern and safe structures that are appropriate to a broader range of ages and are accessible to and inclusive for children and adults with disabilities, thereby increasing the opportunity for public outdoor recreational use of the Baldwin Playground consistent with the LWCF Act, and finally, refurbishing the tennis court area to make it accessible and usable by a more diverse range of abilities and uses by the public. Again, consistent with the original intention of the LWCF grant that the area be a multiple-purpose play area. While we expect that opponents to the Baldwin School project will continue to fight us on this and other issues, the co-chairs of the Baldwin Building Committee are satisfied that the Baldwin School can be built on the designated site, and the Baldwin Playground can be utilized by the Baldwin School and the children in that school as contemplated by the Building Committee and the School Committee, and we will discuss that with the full Building Committee at our next meeting on Thursday. So that's basically a report on what Julie and I have looked at regarding the playground.
Okay. Let's just look at the schedule here. And we're seeing the cost estimates, they're noted explicitly on this, on the Baldwin side is coming in on the week of the 25th or November 1st, and then on the Driscoll side, the week of November 1st. So I guess one concern I have, just something I'd like us to think about as we go forward here, is should we be going forward at this town meeting with this, and I'd just like us to think about that. The alternative would be doing a town meeting sometime in January. There are project implications to that. One implication would be it would move the whole project back, would move both projects back. So conceivably, very aggressively, if we were to approve schematics at the November town meeting, schematic design could commence immediately after the feasibility phase. So, okay, thank you. So we could proceed full steam ahead and head towards a townwide referendum in the spring. So that would put us on a trajectory to have numbers with confidence to put on the ballot at the May town election. If we were to wait until January, we'd probably be looking at a fall townwide referendum, either October or November. And I don't think next year there's a state election, so we wouldn't have a kind of an election day that we could piggyback on. So it would be just a town election. So that gives us a little more freedom on when to set it. So it's something to think about.
So I understand the implications of a potential delay until sometime beyond the November special town meeting. I'm just curious about whether the October 25th or November 1st deadlines for cost estimates are, is there any concern that we're going to miss those deadlines? Is the question, the analysis that we're doing about whether to proceed in November or wait, about whether the cost estimate is coming in too close to the November town meeting, or is it out of concern that we won't have the cost estimate in hand?
No, in my mind, it's more, I'm hearing confidence that we'll have the cost estimates.
Yes.
On both projects. It's the time relationship between the time we get it and town meeting that concerns me. And then, of course, there's the issues on Baldwin, especially the traffic that is coming out. What's the projection on the Baldwin traffic? So the 18th-ish, 19th, whatever that Thursday is.
25th.
25th.
Yeah, so, okay.
Okay. Okay, so that's just something we've,
Will we be able, say, take Driscoll, for instance, where we have these preliminary concept and design alternatives, would we really be able to choose one that quickly? Even if we have the cost estimates, there are other costs that go into these things and other considerations, and it needs some time and discussion, in Brookline, obviously involving, half of the population, so at least, so, I'm wondering whether that's realistic, November is realistic.
the schedule there has the revised on Driscoll, the revised preferred design alternative selection in December, and then, which is after town meeting. And then with Baldwin, it's, again, after town meeting. So,
So you're saying it would be a
The revised prefers after town meeting. We have a recommendation.
oh, the recommendation is right before town, okay. On Baldwin, the recommendation would be the week before town meeting, and then Driscoll, the week, it's town meeting week. So, well, I just wanted to float that. I think if we're going to do January, we should announce that sooner rather than later so people can plan, because I know the moderator, for example, wants to take a trip in January. So
what are the consequences of having the referendum in November of 2019 in terms of when we can get going, building school, and when it ultimately opens?
probably pushes it back probably a year. Or
Yeah, that would push back the project a year because construction documents couldn't begin until after the referendum, and that process is a year-long, really a year-long process before construction can begin. So it would push the project back for a year, or by a year.
The opening back a year also.
Yes.
right, yeah. Though we'd have to. I look at Mr. Masak. I guess it would probably be useful to kind of chart that out. Yeah, November versus January, and what are the how does that fit into the? How does that affect the
It's actually
timeline?
November versus,
November versus January.
Town meeting.
town meeting.
Town meeting. Yeah.
Should come to the front.
Right. Okay. So that's the price.
So moving to 2 months loses us a year? That doesn't
Well,
make any
because
sense to
and
me.
well, you move it 2 months, and then
So it's like 6 months from May.
the debt exclusion is 6 months later.
Right. I think, if I may, by having if you were to have a special town meeting in January, schematic wouldn't be done in time to have a townwide election in May, and so it's that amount of time that's needed for schematic, which then I think that generally there's not ever a town election in the summer months, so it pushes that back to the fall, and so. It's that implication of the time that's needed that the sort of that 2 months gets magnified by those other two factors.
A schematic time frame of only 6 months, or only a few months, in either case seems quick to me. I mean, I know that at the high school, which I'm much more familiar with, it took essentially a year.
More complicated project.
It is a more complicated project, that's true, but still in all, and part of that was some additional feasibility, but,
Right. I mean, I think that the difference is that Ron came on board at the very end of September. I'm sorry, the very end of
July.
August.
July.
In terms of when they started working at the high school, completed feasibility, and then worked into schematics and had the preferred design alternative by, I believe, February, early March. So it was a longer timeline, to be sure, but obviously there's a huge complexity, as you well know, huge complexity to that project.
And the high school project started from ground zero, whereas we have a lot of the work done, including related to schematic design already. And it's not the same building, but, a lot of the thinking and initial design has been done.
I think there's a fair amount of thought for feasibility. I think the cost estimate for that would come out of schematic. I think that there is likely a question, as Jonathan was the designer of the initial much larger Baldwin project. I think that there are some extrapolations that the board could make based on a smaller project, not doing, a parking lot at Sewell, sort of what came off that project. I think Driscoll does need the time that schematics would afford. Both projects need the time, but Driscoll, what we have is we have the estimate from the site study that HMFH did, a fantastic site study, but it's really just that estimate, and we need to understand the town. We, the town, need to understand, I think, in particular, the difference between what a renovation and what that range from renovation, light touch renovation, all the way through to new construction would be for the Driscoll project. And so I do think schematic will take time, certainly, but I don't think it'll take as much time as the high school project.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so if anyone from the public wishes to speak, now's your time.
Good evening. Everybody knows me. I'm Stephen Wald. I represent some of the neighbors of the Baldwin.
Now, I'm a little troubled by some of the neighbors.
Okay.
It would be good to know who some of them are.
Well, the reason we've avoided saying that is because they've kind of been vilified. And so,
But it makes it difficult for us because we don't know whose properties we should be mitigating. It would be very helpful for people to step forward instead of.
And we're asked to be transparent. I think we can ask you to be transparent.
Well, I think in a different setting, I'd be happy. I mean, if you really want to talk to them, I think they might be willing to talk to you. But we've never gotten that overture. I'm just here to address.
We gave them an overture. There's an overture going on right now to have coffee with the chairs.
Well, I've never heard my client specifically invited to talk about the issues of concern to them. And in fact, when we've written letters.
We don't know who your clients are, so we can't do an overture.
Well,
I know I sent an overture to Mr. Kraft, who sent me a 4-page letter of demands.
So let me tell you the tenor and the concern that we have is just so, for example, we hear a lot of that the rich neighbors in Baldwin are the ones that are stopping this project. And in fact, that's exactly not the truth. What happened with the big Baldwin property was that town council in early 2016 told this committee and the school committee that you have problems there. And then they were ignored. Okay? And then it was the National Park Service that stopped the project, not any effort by the neighbors. Okay? And
we're not doing that project.
I understand that, but I think you have the same concerns. I've read Mr. Green's statement, and I remember, and this is all I really wanted to comment on briefly, is I remember Mr. Wyszynski and other members of the select board, as well as the school committee, on June 13th, when the selection was made, that this would be a real feasibility study. And I don't really see that that's happening. With respect to the legal, and two issues were talked about. One is the legal issues, and the other is the traffic. On the legal issues, you might remember that the town meeting actually required an outside council opinion, or a town council opinion. And what Mr. Green just read, and maybe there's more coming, is not that. What it says is, in paragraph 3, it says that based on the earlier information we got, you can't do a conversion. And then all it says is, based on that information that you can't do a conversion, the co-chairs of the building committee consulted with the design professionals. So who has any fiscal responsibility would spend $1.5 million without any kind of legal opinion that you can actually do it, let alone calling the National Park Service, which I gather either hasn't been done or at least it hasn't been completed. It's just, I think, a fiscally irresponsible thing to do. Just one brief comment on the traffic, and that is the traffic study that's being undertaken right now is about as thorough as the FBI investigation of the recent Supreme Court judge. There's nothing really happening with it. Of the $27,000 that's being allocated, only 11 is actually devoted to the study. The rest is just attending meetings. And of that 11, a good part of it's supposed to be studying other schools. And this is for an engineering firm that has already said you cannot queue these students, but drop them off and pick them up on this site. So it's really not a legitimate study. In any event, I think that both the chair and the school committee have made commitments to have a real feasibility study, which is what the bylaws require, by the way. And I don't think that's happening.
Thank you. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Thal. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 16. It's 4-0 Red Sox after 4.
We might get our oysters.
I apologize for having one ear on Superintendent Bott and one ear on the game, but I do have priorities, despite my commitment to someday seeing a school built in this town. So I'm basically here just to ask you to say yes to continue moving this along. Speaking of saying yes, as I was thinking about whether I was going to get down here tonight, going through some old files, I came across some stuff from 2015 from the group called Yes in Sobro. For those who were on the select board then, you might remember. Ms. Hamilton, I don't think you were. But this was a group of Brookline parents, Baker parents, Heath parents, South Brookline parents who were saying yes to a new school, specifically in South Brookline. We were talking about Baldwin then, several hundred people signing letters of support. I guess my point in going back to the antique Yes in Sobro stuff is that we've all been waiting. It sounds like time is of the essence in terms of not losing another year. I don't have a very full understanding of what the town meeting vote means vis-a-vis your powers or authority, but my basic understanding is if town meeting authorizes you to release the money, it's not like it's going to go out the door tomorrow. And in fact, what we're doing is saying we have confidence in you to continue making the right decisions. So the $3 million isn't going to just go on November 13th. And I don't believe you would authorize projects to continue that are not feasible or are too expensive. But I think we know Baldwin is doable. It's the relatively least expensive. It's the relatively quickest. We had a pause last year, right? We were here a year ago within a special Article 1 that asked us to pause, put everything back on the table. We spent money on Dr. Connolly, HMFH, and here we are with the result that was asked for in that article, which is a multi-site approach. We have it. Let's move forward and build a school. Thank you.
Come on up. Sure.
My name is Sarah Stoutland. I am a Westbourne Terrace resident, and I am on the Driscoll Building Committee. I'm here just to piggyback on Carolyn Thal about the pause, like we've been pausing a lot, and it's probably time to stop pausing because we have students who are in classes that are way too big and classrooms that are way too small in most of our schools. And if we really are thinking about the students, I think what we need to do is not pause. Our kids need classrooms. Let's do it. Yeah, that's what I have to say. And as we know that this isn't a 6 weeks pause. This is a 1 year pause. And I think that's really important to remember. Thank you.
Nathan Spritz. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 16 and a Baker dad. And like the school projects, I took the long way around to get here. On June 13th, this board, along with two other boards, the school committee and the ad hoc subcommittee of advisory, came up with a three-legged stool. And that three-legged stool really is set up to solve three problems that we have in this town. We have two schools that badly need to be renovated and badly need some additional space for some of the students that are just too crowded. And those two legs are taken care of with the Pierce and the Driscoll projects. The Baldwin project is the least expensive way that we currently know of to build the capacity that we need for the town. And at this point, with the timelines in front of me, echoing Sarah, echoing Carolyn, we have immediate needs for our school children, but we also have a need to see if we can push these projects forward as fast as possible, not just for the school children, but to avoid, and I'm not sure, Mr. Masick, if we have an idea about construction cost escalation for a year's delay, but that's not an immaterial number that we're talking about. We're talking about, taking a look back at the HMFH study, more than $80 million for Driscoll, $80 million for Baldwin, some number for Pierce with MSBA partnership, and escalating the two pieces that we have complete control over by 5%, 6%, 7% for 1 year. That's an awful lot of extra money to be asking our taxpayers for. So if there's just some way that we can shoehorn in a vote before June so that we don't lose that year, I would just ask that everybody works hard to do that. So thank you.
Another option would be debt exclusion override in June. Yeah.
Hello. I'm Julie Schreiner Oldham. I'm the Vice Chair of School Committee and Co-Chair of Baldwin School Building Committee with Bernard. And I've been asked on behalf of the school committee to come here today to let you know that we had a public hearing last week and we heard from members of the public as well, and that the school committee voted unanimously in support of warrant articles 3E and 4. And so I wanted to share that, and then putting on the other hat that I do wear as a parent. I actually, as all of you know, I live in a Baker Heath buffer, and so my kids currently attend Baker School. I have a 6th grader and a 3rd grader, and Mackenzie, who's 4 and is often at our meetings. And I just wanted to speak as a parent about the impact of the delays. And I think that sometimes it is easy to say, what does a pause mean for the kids? And well, aren't our kids doing okay now as we are? And at least at Baker School, over the last week or so, there have been 2 events where the school principals have had an opportunity to speak directly about this. And one was at the Baker School open house, and then the following morning they spoke to 6th grade parents at the 6th grade open house. And at both of those opportunities, the Baker principals were talking about the detrimental effect that they are feeling in the buildings because of the crunch of students. And so one parent at the 6th grade open house said, well, yes, but our teachers are great and they're doing a great job, and so the kids are not impacted by this insane overcrowding that we have in the school buildings. And the principal said, we have co-principals right now, and one of the principals said, no, that is not a correct statement. It is correct that we have fabulous teachers and that they're doing a fabulous job in the building that they have right now, under the conditions that they have right now, but please do not for a moment think that this is not having an impact on the kids. And I think that that is something that is important to remember as we are making these decisions. And so, I put that out there as we're considering these decisions, and just keep moving forward.
Mr. Lescoia.
David Lescoyer, Precinct 11 Town Meeting Member. I wasn't expecting to stand up here, but there was something you just said, Mr. Chair, which I would hope that the board and the administration would look at, really look at the calendar and see if maybe by moving this and that, a few weeks here and there, we can win enough time to still get it done with enough time for the town to digest all of the issues. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, I'm going to, oh yeah, Mr. Bott, yeah.
I'm not making public comment. But I just wanted to add, when I started my presentation, I had said to this board that I would update you on the Pierce project, and Mr. Spritz's comment of the 3 legs of the stool reminded me I had not done that. So as a reminder to the board, April 6th of last year, the school department submitted a statement of interest, actually 2 statements of interest at that time, one for Pierce and one for Driscoll. After the June vote of the joint boards, or the joint vote of the 3 separate boards, I withdrew the Driscoll SOI and left the Pierce SOI, which at the completion of the Coolidge project, when the Coolidge project got the occupancy permit in very late August, the Pierce project became the town's priority. The Pierce project was selected by the MSBA for further analysis. That further analysis happened today. They had received over 100 applications. In all, approximately 70, they reported this morning, were for the expansion renovation type of project, the core project, as it were, that we also applied for. And a certain number of those were selected for further study, which includes staff from the MSBA, as well as design firms who serve as a consultant to the MSBA touring the school, meeting with representatives of the school, most importantly the school principal, and the building department, and that's what happened today. The next steps in the process at either the December or February MSBA board meetings. I was under the impression it was the December board meeting, but the MSBA staff said today there's a possibility it could also be at their February board meeting. They will make decisions about which communities to invite in this year for projects. So sometime between December and February, we will know if we're invited in, and we will have a better sense of where we are in terms of the Pierce project.
Thank you. I just want to make one statement and kind of amplify something that Mr. Spritz said, and that is the solution as a 3-legged stool. And if we're trying to take a holistic approach to solving a townwide problem, which was the creation of 30-ish classrooms, and each one of these projects doesn't meet that goal. All the projects together meet the goal. If one of the projects fails, the goal isn't met. So they kind of rely on each other. Mm-hmm. Mr. Pinchas.
At the podium. All of the discussion here is certainly relevant and appropriate. I think now it's time for the great philosophical question, where does it all end? The plans here take care of the immediate crises, which I think in some ways has been caused by the school committee, the smaller class size, which has now gotten to a point of an obsession, and I think in some ways is a myth. I'm practically a Brookline native. Back in the day when I went to the devotion school, when it was the devotion school and dinosaurs grazed on the playground, we had 4 sections of the school for all grades. Class size was 30. That was routine and planned, and we all got a great education. Now I know that was then, this is now. People talk about special education, which is obviously increased costs, programs, services. which the kids need, and no one wants to deprive the kids of a good education, including me. But I think some of these things down there, just to get to be more programs, more services, layers of new employees every time they get an operating override at the school department, and it just keeps going and going. And any comment or even assumption that this whole enrollment increase is going to stop or even slow down in 5 years, I think is just another myth. So where does that leave us then? I mean, it'll be deja vu. I mean, like cable television, we could just maybe get paid money for rerunning all of these meetings in 5 or 10 years, non-tax source of revenue. But again, I'm not trying to be sarcastic. Again, the plans are wonderful. You got a good architect, the involvement of the community, the school committee, the time that people have put in, volunteers like the school committee, the staff that we go out and find and hire. It's all wonderful. Helen Charlupski showed me the schematic designs for the high school after one meeting when I couldn't go to all 3 meetings that I wanted to. Like most Brookline residents, I haven't figured out how to go to more than 2 meetings, 1 meeting at once. And the plans are beautiful. New campus, everything else. Another good reason to be young again. Well, we're not going to talk about that. But again, it's a situation down there that, again, where does it all end? They're encouraging more people to come in. The one statistic out of, I think, was Dr. Bott made, was out of the 476 increase in the enrollment, 375 are English language learners. I mean, we're just bringing people in. And to repeat one of my earlier comments at one of the first meetings, when you put a lot of honey out in the back porch, then you're surprised when you get a lot of bears. And, I don't mean that as an insult to any, immigrants or anybody else. We get people coming in from Cambridge. Everybody wants to come to Brookline. I mean, we're talking about the laws of physics here. 2 objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time without a collision, which is usually violent. Now, I hope we don't get violent over there down there, but I think the fiscal impact of this kind of planning, where do we get the money? And as I said in an earlier meeting, nobody's talking about the interest on these bonds, which can run 20 to 25 years, which is going to easily be 40 to 50% increase in the actual cost. And then when they put questions on the ballot that don't even give any idea of how much it's going to cost, yes, it's public record. Yes, you can go through minutes of meetings, attend the meetings, watch television, and everything else to try to find something else. But when you go into the ballot down there and you say down there, funds necessary for devotion, what does that mean? And what was really appalling, in my opinion, was the referendum for the devotion school debt exclusion was on May 5th, 2015. The actual vote and official decision by the MBS, the school committee funding people, came on June 3rd. And the letter to the town, that was almost 4 weeks after the referendum. Now, you may have gotten an unofficial opinion, or they may have said down there, yes, we're going to approve it. But you did not have a formal decision when the referendum went through. And you're asking people to vote on something you don't even know.
We did. We had an indication from the MSBA.
That's what I figured. But again, it's still the question of funds necessary.
And this time, these 2 projects are not MSBA projects.
Right. So again, but are we
and,
going to...
and we take and took a lot of pains to advertise and make and publicize the costs, and we and the impact, and we
right. I know there were many
we laid
meetings,
it out there, and it was
many meetings, and that
and it was
again,
on the campaign literature. It was very well known, and the structure of the ballot with no dollar amount on it was imposed on us by the MSBA.
Oh, I know it's legal.
So
I'm familiar.
I would have preferred to put a number on there.
But again, I think earlier debt exclusions did have a number. So again, the question is, are we looking at any other way of funding this besides the property tax, which I know is a problem for all municipalities in Massachusetts and even around the country? And we aren't looking at pretty much anything else, like a municipal income tax. Maybe we could find oil under the parking lot outside, but I don't think that's going to happen. And again, I'm not trying to be facetious, but you're piling debt upon debt. And, where does it end? And when I asked the same question down there to Chairman David Pollock, he just says, well, when the voters decide not to vote for the money. I mean, is that the strategy for the town? Just squeeze as much as you can, as often as you can?
There are certain limitations as to what taxes we can add. The property tax can be added through a referendum with the voters, but we are looking at other revenue sources. That's why we're putting a lot of emphasis on economic development. We have a very large project being built right now in Brookline Village that just on its own is going to raise over $2 million a year in taxes. And that's almost half a school. So, you know,
we do have the revenue, but it's still really
no.
not,
You know what? I hear you. You know,
so again, I think that it's. I mean, what do you do? And again, I think we should make a policy decision now that once we get through all of this and we survive it, and we probably will, Brookline usually does, you know, basically, we're not going to be building any more schools. We're not going to be expanding any more schools. This is it. They want to pile into Brookline. Come on in, but we're going to pile your kids into the classroom. And I know that may not be what people want to hear, but the residents of this town, you know, I think should have, you know, some respect and not just pander to what basically is a bunch of carpetbaggers with kids.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr.
Are you
Pinchas, thank
proposing a
you.
moratorium on all new buildings, all new housing?
No. After we finish this.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pinchas.
Yeah, I think the attitude of Brookline is everyone is welcome. We're not going to turn people away.
No, this is not a question of discrimination. We're not getting any of that.
Discrimination.
It's not a question of that. But these people coming in here have got to think about the impact it's having on the residents that are already here.
Okay.
And that's something they should think about, and they should think about there are going to be consequences to
Yes,
their actions.
we will
Like
consider
larger
that.
class size.
Got it.
Thank you.
I just want to supplement the chair's point about other revenue sources that we seek to tap beyond economic development. You know, marijuana, recreational marijuana, say what you might about it. We were very public about the fact that it was an additional revenue source, which wouldn't eliminate the need for debt exclusion and overrides, but certainly mitigate the size and potentially stretch out the length or the distance between those votes being taken. We have a track record of aggressively pursuing nonprofits to partner in pilot agreements. So I think Mr. Pinchas makes a valid point about the dependency on the property tax, the taxpayers of the town of Brookline, but we take seriously and have made efforts in the past to try and decrease our reliance on the property tax base, and will continue to do so in the future.
Well, let me just toot your horn for a second, because you have pushed us to apply to the state for more liquor licenses, and there's a bill, the legislature passed a bill, and those are on the governor's desk now. And they will definitely, those liquor licenses help us bring in more revenue. They bring businesses to Brookline, and we get a local tax out of that. So that's a piece of it too. It's maybe not the biggest piece, but every piece is important. So we hope he signs it.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think we're taking any votes tonight. We have a lot to think about. So thank you for your input, everyone who spoke. And not so fast, Ms. Goff. We're going to move on to Article 10. Thank you. So this is a easement, technical warrant article, so that we can run, a gas line to our new fire training center. Mr. Masak, the floor is yours.
So as part of our new facility, we need a new gas line. So this is really a two-part document. Originally, we the gas company back in April asked for a grant of easement, and in speaking with town council, we needed a town meeting vote. So we went back to National Grid and we said, that isn't going to happen. We can't give you a grant of easement immediately. So they gave us a grant of license, which wouldn't hold up the project. The gas line still isn't in due to circumstances beyond our control, but as part of the conditions for the grant of license, they requested that we be part of the November town meeting for the grant of easement.
Okay.
And basically what it does is it goes next to the existing facility into the new facility and basically allows National Grid, if something happens to the gas service, to come on property and deal with their pipe. And that's all that's going into the property is a piece of pipe.
Any gas leaks in the area?
I can't answer that.
I mean, we all laugh, but, you know.
No, we don't, and we were part of meeting, the last time we did the grant of license, we didn't move it forward until the gas company, as you spearheaded, Select Board Heller, we met with the gas company, and they needed to have a plan regarding gas leaks, so.
Okay, well, this is a very technical item.
It still
Seems-
needs to be reviewed by Town's Council and approved by Town's Council, but right now it's written in their terms, and so.
So is this the language that we need voted, that's in the warrant?
So you're just, town meeting is giving the authorization so that you can enter into the agreement.
Authorized to grant upon terms. Okay. So it's not actual, so this is just authorizing us to enter into the,
Vesting powers.
yeah, okay. Oh, okay.
We should do the public hearing to get that.
This is a public hearing. If anyone wishes to speak on this item, now's your time. Okay. I think on this one, we should just take a vote. Is that okay? So I'll move that we recommend favorable action. All those in favor, please say aye.
Should you condition it based on legal counsel's review?
No, all this does is it authorizes us to.
It'll come back in front of you when it's actually ready to be executed.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we would do is we would take the word to see if, and that would become voted, and then remove or take any action there too. So the motion is a recommendation of favorable action. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller. Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Yes.
Okay, now Ms. Goff.
Okay. So the budget amendment, which was discussed with the Superintendent Bott, is actually a little bit larger in scope than what he had presented. So there are several items that we're dealing with the budget amendment. Appropriating schematic design under item 3E is just one component of several things that we're trying to do. You should have a memo in front of you from me to the town administrator outlining the areas that we're dealing with for the budget amendment. So I'll run through those right now. So the first thing that we're looking to do is appropriate additional state aid. We were conservative with our budget estimates, as we always are, and fortunately, the state aid came in higher than what we had budgeted for. So pursuant to the town school split, the town side would be getting $254,699. We had a meeting of the town school partnership last week. The school department is dealing with some issues around year-end fiscal 18 and some recommendations that our auditors had around a year-end deficit. So their share is actually going to help resolve some of the year-end issues identified by the auditors. The town share is looking to do several things. We have a recommendation for appropriation in the finance department. We're recommending an additional position in the comptroller's office to help us with some benefit-related administration, munis deductions, and auditing and reconciliation with our GIC information. We're also looking to appropriate $70,000 to help the finance department deal with some credit card service charges. So the fiscal 19 budget assumed that we would no longer be absorbing credit card fees town-wide. We had a delay in the implementation of putting a convenience fee on at the meter. So that change went into effect in October, so we have 3 months of billing that we need to deal with for that. Town council, we're recommending a half funding for a half position for half the year, since by the time town meeting votes, it will be pretty close to the end of the calendar year, to bring on an additional labor council. As a result of, some of the conversations we've been having over the past few years about the model that we currently use with outside counsel and labor services. The fire department, Chief Sullivan was here a few weeks ago on a grant that we just recently received for an SCBA filling station. The grant was for $50,000. The cost of the station is approximately $75,000. So we're looking to meet that gap with $25,000 appropriation. We have estimates for health insurance for the 2 benefit eligible positions I just previously described. We have an appropriation for town meeting, $20,000. I think you'll recall at the end of last fiscal year, we needed a reserve fund transfer for the town meeting account. Some of that's related to the advertising that we've increased in that line. Some of it's related to the staffing that's needed for electronic voting. The health department, $5,400 is recommended for maintenance contract associated with the AEDs in several public buildings.
That's defibrillators.
Correct. Previously, that was funded through a variety of soft grant funds, and we're recommending that a recurring revenue source be allocated for that. In addition to allocating state aid, we are looking to right-size the water and sewer budget now that we have final MWRA rates and an adjustment that is needed to the debt service line. The rates that you voted over the summer actually reflect those changes and the lower savings that we're getting through lower than expected MWR rates. You should also have information in your packet from Erin Galantine talking about a water and sewer project that's needed, connected to the Brookline Reservoir project. There's some work underneath the gatehouse to our sewer system that needs to happen prior to commencing the project. And so her memo kind of describes some of the work that needs to be done. We talked about it downstairs earlier tonight with the capital subcommittee. So essentially, it's to make sure that the valves that we have under the building are working correctly and can be controlled in the correct way as well. In addition to that, we've been calling TNC's transportation network companies, we keep saying it's Uber and Lyft money. Essentially, there's an assessment on every ride that people take on rideshare companies of 20 cents per ride. And so 10 cents of that assessment goes to the state, and the other half goes to communities where the ride originated. So that results in our town getting $207,000 approximately from that state assessment, and the Transportation Division has recommended 4 projects as a result. And they're outlined in my memo. Pedestrian crosswalk, stations and signage, replacing some inventory that we currently have, distracted driver and pedestrian crosswalk enforcement, Corey Hill Park Safety Assessment Plan. I'm being told that this is actually going to be raised crosswalks instead of what was originally contemplated after more discussion with the Transportation Board. And then the Baker School Safe Routes to School program, as also described in my memo. So there's a lot here in this budget amendment. Item 3E is the schematic design funding. We're anticipating that a majority of that funding will come from the overlay account. The Board of Assessors just recently declared overlay surplus of about $1.3 million. And when we're ready to prepare a vote under Article 3E, we'll have the gap filled for the rest of the funding.
Yeah.
I'm curious about this, the rideshare revenue. Is this 207,000, does that represent a year of collection or less?
That's a 1 year's worth. So we had approximately 2 million rides originate in Brookline.
Wow.
Wow, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Okay, I'll feel better about calling Uber and Lyft.
Do that.
So we're anticipating this level of funding potentially could be an ongoing revenue source for us as well, which would be nice.
But it is restricted. You may only use it for certain road purposes, traffic, transportation-related
Yeah,
purposes.
but we always have those.
We have plenty.
We have plenty of ads. Todd was saying he's got, a complete streets list that's very large, so I don't think we'll have any trouble finding projects for these funds.
Has advisory had a hearing on the proposed use of the ride share money?
So the capital subcommittee has. Generally, they were supportive of most of the items. The only item they really had an issue with was the Baker School item.
Really?
They weren't happy that the reason why the request was made was because of some cuts that the school department had made to the bus for Baker. And they didn't seem to think that was an appropriate use of that money, given the fact that they had done that without consulting the town.
Has an alternate use been proposed?
They have not requested one from Todd. Right now, this is, the recommendation, and if we need additional projects, I'm sure he could come up with more.
That, to me, is the natural next question. Okay.
I have one question.
Sure.
I think I lost it. Oh, here it is. Town council, $50,000 for half-time. So what level attorney are we talking about? Because I would think that to get a labor lawyer who could really get up to speed quickly and do the fairly difficult things that we're doing in terms of labor issues would require someone with fairly extensive experience and seniority, which would be fairly expensive.
So this is half funding for, January through June.
Right, no, I understand.
For an associate town council position, so it's at the same level as our other attorneys. And the thought process is that once this person is, on board in fiscal '20, we'll be able to reduce outside counsel to make up the difference in the salary line.
I think, Bernard, we will continue to have an outside labor attorney who's very high level. This position would be, I think, in the middle. I think it would be someone with some experience, not a junior, sort of right out of school. It's somebody we anticipate would have a fair amount of experience, but be at the associate level.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on this?
So I believe the full advisory is voting on this next Thursday. So I don't know how they are going to react to some of these recommendations. So.
Okay. I'm willing on that one, on this, to see what they do. And these seem pretty straightforward, and I don't have nothing hits me as something I wouldn't support. So.
Can do a public hearing.
This is a public hearing. If anyone wishes to speak on this item, now's your time. Okay. So let's take a vote on this tonight.
Right.
And just for further background on Article 4, I know we kind of jumped into the PowerPoint presentation right away. So Article 4 is schematic design money that had been appropriated by town meeting in May. So there was a condition placed on that appropriation that before you went ahead and spent that money, that you had to come back to town meeting for the green light to move forward. So that is what the the intent of Article 4 is.
So that's not new money?
Correct.
That's
It's
just-
already appropriated. There's just a hold placed on it currently.
Okay, that's fair.
Until a process played out.
Right. This is it.
So I don't know if you want to, the public hearing under Article 4, I don't know if you
We
want to.
kind of did that already.
Yeah, I mean, you did ask people to come up and speak, so.
Yeah.
So, Article 4 is, as I understand it, is saying that town meeting has to give the go-ahead based on not anything specific in, for example, our bylaw 3.7, but just assurance to them that, we are ready to go forward.
At the time that it was appropriated, the site selection had not even occurred yet in terms of what the solution was going to be. So there were a lot of people that, without understanding what the approach was going to be, the Pierce, the Driscoll, and the Baldwin recommendation, that wasn't known at the time. So that's why the hold was placed.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Okay, last item on the agenda is the Land Bank Committee, talking about alternate sources of revenue.
Yes.
So, Ms. Hamilton.
So I had forgotten this, but we actually approved a charge for the committee back in June. And then I spent a lot of time this summer, mostly late summer, trying to recruit membership and bumping up against Chairman Select Board Member Franco's efforts to recruit people for the Fiscal Advisory Committee.
Healthy competition.
Yes. I think I made out, though.
We'll see.
So the list is before you. I had a conversation with each one of these people, and they have the skill sets that I was looking for. I was looking for dispassionate people that were very knowledgeable about a lot of fiscal issues in town. David Lescoyer had been the original petitioner of the warrant article. He did a lot of research. Harold Peterson is a tax assessor in town. Ben and I had the opportunity to work with him on the Override Study Committee. I really enjoy working with him and found him to be an encyclopedia of very useful information. Linda Pelkey, I've been impressed with my interactions with her on her land use work. We were members of the Green Caucus together, and she is an open space advocate. Blair Hines had actually approached Chairman Wyszynski. I believe he's on the planning board, and he is a landscape architect by training. Marilyn Newman is a recent addition to EDAB, and she has a very good fiscal analysis background. Joanne Sullivan, I was introduced to through a connection, the Bank of Boston. She works there. She's also a resident of Brookline. Bob Lepson is a member of the Diversity and Inclusion. Community Relations, thank you. But he has a background in fiscal analysis as well. David Perlman had expressed interest, so he is a non-voting member, liaison for the school committee, and I'll be chairing as a non-voting member as well.
Okay, so I guess we should vote the slate as presented by Select Person Hamilton. So I'll move the slate. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco?
Aye.
Select Person Heller?
Aye.
Select Person Green?
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And that concludes our business for tonight.
You and I aren't done.
Pardon?
You and I aren't done.
Yeah, right. Let's go.